He was first called before his continual crimes grew even more brutal, the I-5 Bandit. He cruised up and down the Interstate 5 freeway in Oregon, Washington, and Northern California, stopping at various establishments where young women were working. The suspect would rob the store and, in some cases, sexually fondle young female employees and customers, and also force them to perform oral sex on him at gunpoint. When the bandit's crime spree began in late 1980, the police believed the robberies and assaults were random crimes committed by multiple suspects. Then, in January of 1981, the I-5 Bandit's crimes became more brutal and debaucherous. He sexually assaulted two young sisters, just 8 and 10 years old. Days later, he raped and shot two women multiple times in their heads. One would survive. In February, a mother and teen daughter were both assaulted and murdered in their home. And now the suspect, dubbed the I-5 Bandit, also began to be referred to as the I-5 Killer. As the weeks passed, the police started to notice similarities in the suspect descriptions from crime to crime. The man was tall with dark wavy hair, sometimes wore a fake beard, almost always disguised his appearance with some athletic tape or a bandage or bandages placed across the bridge of his nose. The obscured nose would become the I-5 Bandit/Killer's defining look. And when he sexually assaulted his victims, he almost never had vaginal sex with them, almost always oral, another signature detail. Now authorities started to believe the dozens of recent robberies, assaults, rapes, and murders along the I-5 corridor were carried out by the same man, the same serial rapist and serial killer. And despite numerous law enforcement agencies coming together to form a task force of sorts, they had no solid suspects. But the police, as it would turn out, already knew their suspect, an Oregon native who had recently been released from prison. They just didn't realize it yet. His name was Randall Woodfield, a suspect in 3 murders in Oregon, just not a primary suspect, even though those victims were all women from his past. Randy, much like another Pacific Northwest serial killer active around the same time, Ted Bundy, he did not seem on the surface like the kind of guy who could commit the crimes he committed. He was very likable, handsome, intelligent, athletic, well-spoken, very charming when he wanted to be. Seemed like a nice guy. Came from a good family, no allegations of abuse of any kind. He was a star athlete in high school, went on to play college football. He was even drafted into the NFL by the Green Bay Packers in 1974. But Randy, like all of these serial killers, was of course not who he seemed on the surface. Beginning in his childhood, around the onset of puberty, Randy began to harbor deviant and powerful sexual compulsions that he had a harder and harder time controlling. He really loved to expose himself to strangers. And he was caught doing this numerous times, beginning in junior high. He then, just before his rape and murder spree, served time for robbing women and sexually assaulting an undercover police officer in a park in Portland. He was released from prison in 1979 and began committing more crimes almost immediately. Randy Woodfield, the I-5 Bandit, the I-5 Killer, would only be convicted of 1 murder, but he's suspected in the deaths of more than 40, almost all of them young women and girls, along with dozens and dozens of robberies and sexual assaults. Today we'll learn all about Randy Woodfield, his known and strongly suspected crimes, and the coordinated law enforcement effort that brought down the I-5 Bandit/I-5 Killer on this week's True Crime, Serial Killing, Go Get Some Counseling if you're struggling to keep your dick in your pants around strangers edition of Timesuck.
This is Michael McDonald, and you're listening to Timesuck.
You're listening to Timesuck.
Well, happy Monday and welcome back to the Cult of the Curious. I'm Dan Cummins, the Suckmaster, Nickelodeon children's programming consultant, executive producer of Sodomy on Sketch, The Dark Side of Disney Animation. And you are listening to Timesuck. Hail Nimrod, hail Lucifina, praise be to good boy Bojangles, and glory be to Triple M, the recent author of his memoir. One quick and I think interesting merch announcement, and then we're into today's show. I know it's not the first of the month yet, but recent events have inspired a new merch drop. The Richard Byrd episode, Old Dickie Bird, being plagiarized by the Human Monsters podcast saga continues. Lindsay and I are very amused by the absurdity of a fake serial killer rising from his fake grave and now attempting to murder a real-life podcast. I wasn't that upset about this initially, but then on a recent episode, the host of Human Monsters called Timesuck listeners, who have been rightfully calling him out for stealing another podcast content, trolls, and told them to, quote, grow up, you fucking baby, and fuck off. And that does upset me. Why attack fans of this show for being good meat sacks Thank you to everyone listening who cares enough to defend this podcast. It means a lot to know that you're that invested. And you're not trolls, you're people with solid moral compasses, and I love you, meat sacks. To be clear, I still don't wish to destroy some other podcast. Everyone makes mistakes. But also, when someone does steal from me and then doesn't fully admit it and continues to monetize my intellectual property, doing nothing is a real bad precedent to set, to act like I don't care at all. Because then I might as well just say, you know what? Don't bother hiring your own researchers or doing real research yourself. Just let us do all the work for you and just take whatever you want. Just open the door to being plagiarized again and again and again. So instead of that, let's have some fun with the situation. We have some fun new merch parodying this entire fiasco. At the time of this recording, still going back and forth with an attorney to figure out what we can legally sell around this situation. So I can't share all the design details with you at the moment, but some stuff, numerous things, will be up at the store at badmagicproductions.com by the time you hear this. So please have a peek and enjoy this random entertainment. And now, speaking of random entertainment, I have a very crazy story that I want you to hear. Pretty straightforward structure today. Going to start with an overview of how serial killers tend to escalate from lesser crimes to murder before going through the full timeline of Randy Woodfield's life and how investigators pinned him as the I5 killer. Criminologists have found that the majority of serial killers do not begin their criminal life with murder, as we've talked about before. Right? They start off committing lesser crimes. And as they make their peace with committing immoral acts and learn how to rationalize these crimes and figure out how to avoid being caught, the severity of their crimes escalates. Right? They typically begin with petty theft, arson, voyeurism, assaults on people or other living creatures close to them who are very unlikely to report their crimes, like, younger siblings or pets. Soon they may begin to start exposing themselves to strangers or to break into people's homes. They then might escalate to armed robbery, sexual assaults, eventually rape and murder. Sometimes escalating even further to prolonged periods of rape and other forms of torture before murder. And then finally to committing multiple rapes and murders in the same attack with, multiple victims. Typically, the further they go down this dark road, outside of some cooling off periods that usually follow nearly being captured, the frequency of their attacks, in addition to the severity, increases. Infamous serial killers like Ted Bundy, Dennis Rader, the BTK killer, and Joseph D'Angelo, the Golden State Killer, first really leaned into their deviant sexual desires when they were teens or young adults by being peeping toms. Criminologist and true crime author Scott Bond has stated regarding the thrill of this, it's a violation of privacy, and it does lend itself to power and control. Bond called voyeurism/peeping a part of a natural evolution of criminal activity, adding, you don't just wake up one day and suddenly say, I'm a serial killer. It just doesn't work that way. Retired investigator Paul Holes, who helped catch the Golden State Killer, we first met Detective Holes here in the Suckverse in episode 90, has said that serial killers / serial predators must overcome barriers to offend in the early stages of their criminal activity. For example, normal people are uncomfortable with the idea of, peeping into their neighbor's window and watching them walk around their house naked or have sex or take a shower while beating off in the bushes. And I'm imagining a few people listening right now being shocked. Like, wait, what? You're saying that's not normal? Oh shit. Well, no one fucking told me. I'm not a monster. It's fun. It's fun. It feels good. But for real, spying on your neighbor like this is an example of a social barrier. It should make you feel uncomfortable to consider doing this. You should realize this is a violation of someone else's privacy and that's wrong, right? It's deviant behavior and you should not want to do it and definitely not feel okay about it if you've done it. Serial killers overcome these feelings of discomfort to go on to murder victims eventually, right? The act of killing an innocent person, that's a big social barrier. To desensitize themselves enough to be able to psychologically handle such an act, these dirtbags typically start off by committing lesser acts that have, quote, less significant societal barriers. Right? Think about old Dick Bird. The Pride of Winnemucca didn't start off raping and strangling and releasing into his victims. No, he started off with voyeurism. Started off jerking off next to his sleeping sister. Then he stuck her hairbrush up his ass, while hiding in a tree outside of a neighbor's window and beating off there. Then after doing more of that, then he started to kill. Anyways, these predators, they might start with voyeurism, then eventually break into an empty house, right, to steal an item they find arousing, like a woman's bra or underwear, Later, once that behavior no longer provides the thrill it used to, once their desire to use some woman however they want without regard to her consent or well-being becomes stronger, they'll break into a house when they know that someone is inside. And maybe the first time they just watch them. But eventually, if they don't get caught, right, they just keep pushing past these societal barriers, they make contact. And it goes further downhill from there. Investigator Paul Holes explained that this is the reason that burglary is reported to the FBI's Uniform Crime Reports, a program that tracks significant criminal offenses. He says that burglary demonstrates that, quote, somebody is willing to take a huge step in criminality. For example, investigators believe Golden State killer Joseph D'Angelo burglarized around 120 homes in Visalia, California. I feel like that was, at that time, like most of the fucking town. Between 1974 and 1976, earning him the nickname of the Visalia Ransacker. And on at least one occasion, D'Angelo was seen peeping into a young woman's house. Her boyfriend caught him, chased him down until he escaped by indicating he had a weapon. He also killed one person, but not a sexually motivated killing. He killed the father of a teen girl he was trying to kidnap in 1975. Shortly after this kidnapping, he moved to Sacramento, graduated from burglary to rape, right? The kidnapping showed that he wanted a body now. Didn't want to just sneak in. He's thought to have raped at least 50 women who reported their attacker. So he may have raped 100 or more women due to how infrequently sexual assaults are reported, and he became known as the East Area Rapist. Then he killed a couple in 1978, and then kept killing for several years, murdering at least 13 people in total. This is the type of steady escalation, typically seen in serial killers. Now back to where it begins, voyeurism. Beaten off in the bushes. One danger of voyeurism involving teen boys is that if they get caught, it's often assumed that they're just curious and that they will grow out of that behavior. And that can for sure be the case. Right? I'll throw myself under the bus here. I think I said this before, but it's been a long time. When I was 15, my 16-year-old friend Chris and I stepped on an outdoor air conditioning unit underneath the window of this woman who lived in the condo beneath Chris's mom's condo, and we absolutely looked through her bathroom window and saw her naked in the shower. Not my proudest moment. First time I ever saw a nude woman in real life. Sorry, random lady who would have been around 35 in 1993 and used to live below Chris Smith and his mom in the condo complex next to the Anchor Village Apartments in Las Vegas, Nevada. Chris and I peeped in for about 2 seconds, got scared. We caught, right? Jumped off the air conditioning unit, ran up the stairs back into his condo, shut and locked the door, laughed our ass off about how reckless we were, and never did it again. At least I didn't. I don't know about Chris. Huge invasion of privacy, and also huge adrenaline rush. I would be lying if I said at the time it wasn't thrilling. Weird for me to reflect on this moment over 30 years later and think about how differently my life could have turned out if that was not a one-time thing. If I didn't feel bad about it afterwards and be like, what the fuck was I thinking? Why did I do that? Like, what if I didn't grow out of it, right? What if I went back and did it again and again and again, and it really turned me on and became an important part of my sexual development? What if I started to masturbate while I was watching, right? How much could that have fucked up my sexual life? A lot. Could have led to a lot of terrible things. A 1997 study called Voyeurism, Assessment and Treatment, published in Sexual Deviance, Theory, Assessment, and Treatment, this academic journal, found that approximately 20% of voyeurs will go on to commit some type of sexual assault. It's quite a few. That's 1 in 5, right? The BTK killer, part of that 20%, Rader admitted that he watched women and broke into their homes to steal their underwear long before he ever became a killer. Some killers view voyeurism as some kind of form of sexual assault training, right? Peeping gives young men a sense of power, allowing them to watch someone in a vulnerable state. They also learn how to observe without detection, right? How to break into a home, how to scout for potential victims. Well, today's killer, Randall Woodfield, engaged in a lot of voyeurism before he escalated to rape and murder. As a young teen, Randall began to experience strong sexual urges he felt he could not control, or rather, he did not want to control. Did not seek help to learn how to control. This led to him begin to peep into women's windows and expose himself to strangers in public. Instead of receiving therapeutic treatment for these urges, he leaned into them, and his sexual fantasies became more and more dangerous. He didn't just want to sneak glances at naked women or shock them by showing them his dick. He wanted to fuck them. He wanted to fuck them when and how he wanted to. And taking things even further, he started to tell himself that they owed him sex, that they shouldn't have the right to withhold it from him. And now when a woman rejected him, he was filled with desire to rape them, to get even with them in his mind, right? How dare they deny him what he wants? Who do they think they are? Why won't they submit to his desires? And now he begins to rape and then to kill. Now he starts to cruise up and down I-5, pulling off the freeway in the Pacific Northwest and finding businesses to rob, and more importantly, businesses with attractive and ideally very young female employees and or customers he can violate. Women he can force at gunpoint to sexually please him. And now with the link between voyeurism and sexual assault established, let's get into the weeds and begin our timeline of Randall Woodfield, both the I5 Bandit and the I5 Killer.
Strap on those boots, soldier. We're marching down a Timesuck timeline.
Randall Brent Woodfield, born the day after Christmas, when his mom began to go into labor, December 26, 1950, in Salem, Oregon. Same middle name as me. Born in the same region of the same country. We both peeped. We're practically the same person. Founded in 1842, after Europeans first settled in the area in 1812, Salem is the capital of Oregon, located in the center of the Willamette Valley, along the Willamette River. Most of the area's original European settlers were fur trappers working for fur trading companies in Astoria, Oregon. Today, Salem's population around 178,000. Back in 1950, population much smaller, around 43,000. Randall, who typically went by Randy, grew up in an upper middle class home, and by all accounts, seemed to have a pretty idyllic childhood. Sometimes it sure seems as if you can have two solid parents, never be abused, and still just get the wrong switch in your head activated. As scary and depressing as that is. Randy's parents were Walter, who went by Jack, and Donna Jean Woodfield, who went by Slick Rick Woodfield. She didn't go by Slick Rick. I just thought it was funny that Walter went by Jack, actually, until I figured out Jack was just his middle name. His dad was 27 when he was born, and his mom was 24. Donna Jean, I like that combo. Donna Jean. Donna Jean attended college for 2 years before her education was interrupted by World War II. Jack Woodfield graduated high school, started working for the Pacific Northwest Bell Phone Company when he was just 21. He would stay with the company for more than 30 years and get a number of promotions along the way and climb higher and higher into management and earn a very solid living, by all accounts. Randy had two older sisters, Susan and Nancy, according to Oregon Live, part of the Oregonian Media Group. One sister went on to be a doctor, and the other went on to be an attorney. And I bet, the parents thought that Randy would have a similar path and be similarly successful. Randy was described as a cute baby with curly dark hair and dark eyes. His sisters doted on him, treated him like a baby doll. His parents loved him. They desperately wanted to have a boy to round out the family, and they spoiled little Randy when he came along. His babysitter recalled he was a quiet baby, real quiet. She thought that was odd. Not sure that means anything, but it's about the only instance we have in sources of anyone noticing anything unusual about him from his early childhood, or something they thought might be unusual. Randy was a good baby, an alert, intelligent baby. He turned over, crawled, walked earlier than most other babies. His father, Jack, hoped that this was a sign that he was going to grow up to become a great athlete, and maybe he was right. He would grow up to be good at sports, and his dad would encourage him athletically throughout his childhood, playing catch with him and whatnot, going to his games when he's not working. Again, this seems like a good family. Around the time Randy turned 1, Jack got a promotion. His family moved roughly 37 miles to Corvallis, Oregon, where they would stay for the next 2 to 3 years. Corvallis is the home of Oregon State University, located in Benton County, in between Salem and Eugene. Salem to the north, Eugene to the south. Population today is about 61,000. Back in 1950, pretty small town. Population of about 16,000. Before Randy even began kindergarten, Jack got another promotion, was transferred to Otter Rock, a beautiful, small, unincorporated community in Lincoln County on the gorgeous Oregon coast. And the family would remain there for many years for the rest of Randy's childhood. The coastal town of Otter Rock is very small. It only had between 100 and 200 residents at the time that Randy lived there. Still only has 225 people. Closest big city is Corvallis, which is 54 miles to the east. But there are a number of other nearby communities up and down the coast near Otter Rock, right? The little 1,500-ish person town of Depot Bay, just 5 miles north. Lincoln City, around 9,000 people live there. Another 12 miles north. About 10,000 people live in the town of Newport, which is 8 miles to the south. Yeah, the whole coastline in that area is littered with small cities, towns, and unincorporated communities. When Randy's family moved there, Otter Rock was considered a very good, safe place to raise a family. And it still is. The whole area is a massive vacation destination. It is my mom's favorite place in the country, if not on earth. I'm actually going to try and take her on a vacation there next summer, hopefully. It's gorgeous. Very, very scenic. The Woodfields would be considered pillars of the community. They lived in a nice house. Jack kept getting promoted to work. Donna Jean started working at a drugstore in Newport when Randy was 10 and her kids didn't need her as much. She was known for dressing exceptionally well, looking much younger than she was, for being super friendly, warm, and also beautiful. Randy's sisters, beautiful girls. Randy, considered an exceptionally handsome boy. As Randy grew older, he started to dislike how he perceived his mother and sisters to be controlling him, though. His dad wasn't home, as much as his mom because, he worked long hours as the primary breadwinner, which meant that his mom was the primary disciplinarian, and Randy didn't like that. However, he also never claimed that she ever beat or abused him. Mostly, he was just frustrated that she would express disappointment in him. Seems like Randy, the more I read about him, very unrealistic, delusional, sensitive human being, just in general, and was a very, very sensitive child, like overly so, like a spoiled brat. One of his biggest complaints from his childhood was no longer liking being called Randy at some point. He felt like Randy was a baby's name and preferred Randall, but his mom, sisters, and everyone else kept calling him Randy, right? How terrible. Oh, God, what a burden. No wonder he became a sexually sadistic serial killer. Randy also complained that his sisters were allowed to do things he couldn't do, and he said his mom would try to explain it was only because they were older, which is, that's how that shit works, but he didn't see it that way. He just saw it as, the girls in the family get to do things that I don't as the boy. It's not fair. Randy also resented the fact that he was often stuck with a babysitter, another girl, when his sisters weren't. They were out, doing things outside the house, and he had to stay home. Yeah, because you're younger than them, you fucking dipshit. Randy often disobeyed his babysitters, demanded to be left alone. When he was home alone with his sisters, he frequently got into fights with them. Susan and Nancy would often tease him, tattle on him, as big sisters do, as big siblings do. Randy felt picked on. He hated how his sisters always blamed him, even if, he didn't think it was his fault. Again, really, actually, now that I think about this, how could he not have ended up as a serial killer? This is a Steph Cockscurvy kind of childhood. If your mama gets disappointed in you when you act up, if your sisters get to stay out later than you just because they're older, if your daddy isn't around as much as your mama because he's killing it at work as the family's primary provider, and if people keep calling you Randy when you prefer Randall, you might need to shut the fuck up and realize how good you have it. Stop acting like a crybaby little bitch. This kind of childhood or worse turned people into serial killers. We would all be trying to kill each other. According to author Ann Rule, who did a big biography on this killer, it's our primary source for this timeline. Randy felt torn between his desire to please his mom and his anger at her because he thought he couldn't meet what he felt her high standards were. But she didn't really have high standards. As an adult, Randy would say he had a very great relationship with his mom, very close to her. Still, Randy's warped perspective on his childhood relationships with women would influence him negatively for the rest of his life. Author Ann Rule wrote, "For the rest of his life, Randy Woodfield would misperceive women, overvaluing them and denigrating himself. In the end, his self-esteem would become totally dependent on how women viewed him." But I would add actually a little twist on that, totally dependent on how he thought women viewed him. But he doesn't live in the real world in his head. His perspective on life doesn't match up with the rest of the people around him are seeing. Because he tried so hard to please his parents, Randy seemed like the perfect child. He earned excellent grades, didn't get into trouble at school, was a talented athlete. Life seemed to come easy to him. He was handsome and popular. He attended school in Newport, where he excelled in track, baseball, basketball, and especially football. So basically, he was good at everything. Jack Woodfield, his dad, super proud of his son's achievements, kept a scrapbook with pics and newspaper clippings of Randy, showed up at a lot of games, tossed the pigskin around again, right? Super involved, cool dad. Despite his success in school, sports, and his popularity, as soon as Randy hit puberty, he began to struggle with deviant sexual compulsions, began to expose himself to strangers, something that became a lifelong obsession for him. And cruelly, most strangers did not enjoy seeing Randy whip his dick out and stare at him. Women, for some reason, did not like him hiding in the bushes outside the windows and beaten off. It's also unfair, really. Poor Randy. He just continues to be victimized. First by his family for loving him so much. Then by society at large for not accepting his cock when he wants to force it on him. If only America could let go of its fixation with all of us needing to wear clothes in public. If we could all just whip out our pusses and tits and dicks whenever we want. Maybe dudes like Randy will never be, pushed into committing other crimes. But also, maybe cases of pink eye and other ailments related to contact with fecal matter might skyrocket. That's something to consider. But also, can some of you lady meat sacks please start talking about whipping your pussies out in public? Right? There just aren't enough female flashers to talk about. It's always dudes. And the thought of women whipping their pussies out, using that phrase too, is very funny to me. Please, just start saying stuff like, give me a second. I need to whip my puss out real quick, take a piss. Or, damn, that's fucking hot. Oh, mama's about to whip her puss out. Or even better, just whip your puss out first, stare at some dude at like the supermarket, whoever, and then just say something like, ooh, mama like, and then just give your bean a few flicks. When I first envisioned some lunatic doing that at the grocery store, I laughed out loud by myself so hard. If I saw a woman do that in public, I would end up on the floor cry laughing, I think. Anyway, exhibitionism seemed to make Randy feel really good. He learns that he loves to peep. Maybe he also likes how a woman or girl seems frightened or shocked when she catches him whipping his dick out. At first, instances of this were rare and isolated. Randy would expose himself to some woman in different locations along the Oregon coast, reducing the odds of them being able to figure out who's doing it. He tried to justify his actions by telling himself that he wasn't touching anybody. He wasn't hurting anyone. But eventually he did get caught. Sometime in junior high is what most sources say. The date is not given. He exposed himself on the Yaquina Bay Bridge in Newport. Just on the bridge, and he whipped his dick out. Oh, fuck yeah! Just standing on the bridge, letting cars pass by, boats floating underneath, letting the world see a little bit of that teen cock. Or that tween cock, maybe. Come on, ladies! Honk for a hard-on. Wave for a one-eyed wink. Thumbs up for dicks up. He was a star athlete, so he was recognized. And the police were called. Allegedly, his coaches found out what happened, swept it under the rug, right? Boys will be boys. What's the point of even having a dick if you can't show it off on a bridge? The police might have been willing to look the other way because Randy, hadn't been in trouble before as well. Or maybe he was cited for this. We don't know. He might have been cited for several instances. Randy's family have never disclosed anything really negative about him since his final arrest. And his juvenile record, whatever it was, expunged when he turned 18. Many years later, Randy's parents would deny knowing about any sexual problems he might have had growing up. I fucking doubt that. That's what they said, but bullshit. His dad, Jack, would say that Randy did not become sexually active until he was in high school. I guess that's what Randy told him. He said Randy once mentioned to him that the girls were loose, and then he didn't pursue that conversation further. Something weird there. If Kyler ever told me that girls were loose, I'm going to have follow-up questions. We're going to have a talk. I'm going to want to know what kind of misogynistic bullshit has gotten into his head and where it's come from. Jack stated adamantly that his son had no problems while growing up. He's a perfect baby boy. He was not involved. This kind of reminds me of Kenneth McDuff, whatever. He was not involved with alcohol or with drugs, that Randy had participated in none of the forbidden activities that many teens dabbled in the 60s. He's not smoking that dope, not dropping that acid. His father would recall that Randy was extremely close to his mom, both as a child and as a young man. One of Randy's closest friends was Mike Schaefer, who became a teacher at Newport School later. And following Randy's arrest for murder and more, Schaefer could not comprehend that Randy could hurt anyone, much less kill someone. When Schaefer and Woodfield were close, Schaefer recalled that Randy was not a kiss-and-tell dater, so Schaefer never knew what sexual contacts Randy might have had. He said he would date one girl almost exclusively for a few months, but never longer, though. He said he had a good relationship with his parents, but whenever he did anything wrong, his mother always knew. He threw a party once, he said, when his folks were out of town. He was really careful. He put throw rugs and plastic over the carpet so there wouldn't be any damage done. And then he rounded up a crew of girls to stay around after the party to clean up. That place was just immaculate afterwards. But when his mother got home, she knew. She just seemed to know everything he was doing. Randy continued playing sports throughout high school. He maintained his popularity amongst his peers. Some classmates later remembered Randy as being quiet and shy, but others said he was fun and liked to play pranks. Many would say that Randy did not have trouble with women. He dated, according to some, he dated a lot, the prettiest, most popular girls in school. He did seem to prefer girls who were younger than him. He will definitely hold on to that preference as he ages, unfortunately. He'll continue to be attracted primarily to teens, regardless of his age. In terms of academics, his strongest area was math. He was placed in advanced classes, and his teachers praised his intellect and his ability to get along with everybody. In football, Randy played wide receiver, and he played it very well. Made the All-State his first team, both his junior and senior years. Received an honorable mention in All-State basketball his senior year as well. Great athlete. Also played varsity baseball, was a sprinter, and a field event specialist on the track team. His ultimate goal was to play professional football, and a lot of his classmates thought that was going to happen. He had the athleticism, the build, the speed. It doesn't say how fast he was, but apparently he's real quick. As a teen, he was almost 6'2", and about 170 pounds, a solid, fast twitch muscle. Randy claimed that during his senior year, he was recruited for scholarships by all the major colleges in the Northwest, and I don't doubt that. But for some reason, he would not end up attending any of those major colleges. Did they find out about him exposing himself? Were there questions about his character? I'm not sure. Randy graduated from Newport High School back in the summer of '69. Oh yeah, I got my first real six string, bought it at the 5 and dime. Played it till my fingers bled. Was the summer of '69. Never really been super into Bryan Adams, but that dude has had some hits. He had some real catchy tracks. Randy did graduate in 1969. And that summer of '69, Randy started working for his dad's employer, Pacific Northwest Bell, for the phone company. He drove trucks, cleaned and repaired phone booths, undoubtedly showed some random ladies his dick, probably beat off in a few bushes outside of some windows. Then in the fall of 1969, Randy enrolled not in a major Northwest college where he had a scholarship, but in Treasure Valley Community College in Ontario, Oregon, all the way across the state and near the Idaho border. And here, Randy's academics declined. The former star pupil earned a 2.5 GPA his freshman year. At the smaller school, where he was able to immediately get a lot of playing time and stand out more, Randy prioritized athletics. He was on the varsity basketball and weightlifting squads, co-captain of the football team, just out the gate, actually set the freshman record for the long jump and track at 22 feet, 6.5 inches. Randy lived with his best friend from home, who also went to the school, Mike Schaefer, who we just met. Mike saw a different side of Randy in Ontario when he found out he stole some cassette tapes from another young man's dorm. When the guy confronted Randy about it, he lied, said he didn't have them, but then he felt guilty, confessed later, told the dorm proctor what he'd done and returned the tapes. Feels like he was at a crossroads there, right? Still has a conscience. Still probably could have corrected his ways. Randy started dating a girl named Sharon McNeil at this school. Oh, Sharon, this will be the most important romantic relationship of Randy's life. The one that will most define, unfortunately, his future actions. He cared for Sharon a lot, maybe too much. Coming on way too strong, and I imagine being overly controlling and jealous and unfaithful will be consistent behavior he will employ in future relationships. And she will dump him. And he does not take this rejection well. He has a real hard time dealing with rejection. And he was accused of breaking into Sharon's home August 3rd, 1970, shortly after they broke up, and just trashing her room. And while I say he was accused, he for sure did this. The burglar entered the dorm room through a bathroom window, took nothing more than a stuffed animal, which happened to be a present that Randy had given Sharon. So he did it. Sharon certainly thought so. She told the police that Randy was arrested. Or excuse me, she told the police and Randy was arrested and charged with vandalism. But then a jury did go to trial, later found him not guilty due to lack of evidence. Also around this time, there were several incidents in Ontario where a man fitting Randy's approximate description exposed himself and was never arrested. Randy was so upset by this breakup, he left the school, left the town, transferred to Mount Hood Community College in Gresham for a semester just outside of Portland, back on the west side of the state. Even though he moved, he could not let go of Sharon. He continued to call her, send her letters. She did not call him or write him back. She ended up getting an unlisted number just to avoid harassment from him. Almost a decade after she last saw Randy, this dude was so fucking obsessed with her, she received a letter, a Christmas card sent in December of 1980 that contained a photo of him, of course, with his dick whipped out. A nude photo she did not want. For the next 2 summers following Sharon dumping him, Randy, backing up now, Randy worked at the Georgia Pacific Plywood and Stud Mill in Toledo, Oregon. Toledo, just a few miles from the Oregon coast, back where he grew up. And during the first summer back home, Randy started hanging out with a fucking 8th grader in Newport named Tracy Connors. This is obviously very problematic. This is very creepy. Right? He can't control a girl his own age, can't bully or groom her into being who he wants her to be. Maybe he can with someone still in junior high who's a lot more impressionable with a lot less life experience. Tracy said she met Randy at the Newport High School football field where he was playing with some friends. She recalled, I got to know Randy pretty well. It was just friendly. He was sort of the big brother I never had. He was always nice to me. And we didn't really have dates, but I spent a lot of time with him. He'd drive me home from the football field in the black Volkswagen bug he had then. Yeah, no, he was not the big brother that she never had. Unless she thinks that it's normal for brothers to try and fuck you. Randy was 20. Tracy was 14 during the following incident. One day, his parents were out of town. He invited her to spend the night with him, as you do with a young friend. Tracy drank 2 beers. Then Randy kissed her, which then escalated into petting, heavy petting. Randy tried to take it further still, but Tracy refused to have sex with him. Randy finally just said, okay, then went to sleep in his own bed and pouted. Another rejection. Tracy will later say that she actually tried to help Randy get back together with Sharon. He's still talking about her. But he said he couldn't call her because her parents accused him of breaking and entering. Randy said he just took some things that he gave her. He's becoming a fucking psycho and doesn't seem aware of this. After Randy returned to school in the fall, Tracy and he are done. By the spring of 1971, now 20-year-old Randy felt like he was no longer on track for the NFL. He was not doing well mentally. He often felt anxious and a bit depressed. He couldn't get the girls he wanted to want him, and he'd only played football for a junior college. He started having nightmares of waking up at the age of 30 and not having done shit with his life. He thought he was keeping his sexual compulsions somewhat under control, though, by working out. He felt the need to perfect his body and his athletic skills to make up for what he believed he lacked in academic and social skills. Randy also was starting to really, really resent women in general. He felt like they wanted more from men than men could normally give them. He was still trying to move on from Sharon, but he just couldn't. He'll later blame her rejecting him for his increasing sexual obsession towards finding women he could control and for hating women. That spring, Randy registers for classes at Portland State University. Football coaches, very happy to have him, and this will give Randy another chance to be noticed by an NFL scout. Randy would be a full-time student here from 1971 to the winter of 1973. Majored in health education and physical education, and he earned average grades. He took courses in handball, wrestling, weightlifting, gymnastics, noticing a pattern there. Worked a part-time job as a cook and waiter at the Burger Chef restaurant near Portland State. According to the Portland Tribune, Randy redshirted his first season with the Portland State Vikings. Caught just 5 passes for 97 yards. During his senior year, got more playing time. Had 18 catches for 216 yards. So, better, but a long ways from looking NFL ready, at least to me. But Portland State has never been known for having a powerhouse football program. Also, they went 1-10 that year. They have sent some athletes to the NFL, but it's been pretty rare. But Randy would get noticed, so he must have had some highlight plays. Randy's teammates liked him, but he had his quirks. Randy's former teammate, Charles Stoudemire, said, Randall was always grooming himself. That even carried over to the way he played. He seemed like he was more interested in looking cute out there than getting the job done. An unnamed teammate would tell Sports Illustrated, you just had a bad feeling about the guy. You always felt like there was something underneath the mask. Interesting. Randy engaged in some spiritual seeking while he was at college in Portland. He joined the fellowship of the Portland State University Campus Crusade for Christ and the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. He now decided he only wanted to date Christian girls. He was looking for a girl who would submit to his patriarchal authority, which I get. Sounds nice. Sounds real nice, Lindsay, if you're listening. She still insists on having autonomy and equity in our relationship and other bunch of bullshit, I don't know what her deal is. Refocusing on sweet, sweet Randall, good boy who goes peeping the potty. I don't think he was that serious about living a godly life because while he was a member of this fellowship, he was also driving around Portland and just showing his dick to a bunch of young women who didn't want to see it. Doing this seemed to give him a rush of gratification he couldn't get anywhere else. And then he got caught again. Happened in Vancouver, Washington, August 7th, 1972, about 10 miles from downtown Portland, Vancouver, just across the river. Randy was convicted of indecent exposure and received a suspended sentence. And we don't have any more details regarding this arrest. There's no indication that Portland State ever found out about this conviction, which allowed Randy to keep playing football and maintain his public image. Randy also continued participating in religious life at school, even carrying around a notebook with his personal testimony. Before he became a Christian, Randy wrote that his goals were to be successful in school, grades, to reach the highest honors I could in my range of athletics, and to be popular with all the girls. Like he always says, all the girls. That's very telling about Randy as you'll get to know him here. Randy wrote that he once turned away from religion because he thought life would be more exciting without rules. But those goals he had were actually only trophies, he wrote, or memories I could hang on the wall. I suddenly found myself going nowhere in school, just wandering around, right? He needs more. Said he was drawn to Christianity because he realized he could push his dick on any woman he wanted and ask for forgiveness later and still get to go to heaven, where he hoped he would be able to continue to whip his dick out He said his ultimate goal was to have Jesus himself catch him beating off in the bushes outside of Mother Mary's bathroom window. He didn't say that. I have no idea why he was trying to be religious. Maybe it was genuine. Maybe he wanted God to help him control his urges. Or more likely in my mind, he wanted to try and deflower as many Christian virgin girls as possible. Randy was arrested again June 22nd, 1973 in the Portland area. He was charged with another count of indecent exposure, also with resisting an officer and attempting to elude arrest. He was sentenced to 5 months and 25 days in jail with a year probation. The resisting an officer charge was dropped. Luckily for him, unlucky for other women, who then would get to see his dick, he never served any time for this incident. And again, I have no additional details for this crime. January 29th and 30th, 1974, arguably the best days of Randy's life. Even though he certainly didn't light up the stat sheet in college, Randy was drafted by the Green Bay Packers, who did see something in him. Barely, but he was drafted. He was the 428th pick in the 17th round. Clearly had the athleticism that they thought could transfer to the NFL. Randy signed his contract February 20th. The Packers promised him $16,000 from the date of signing until May 1st, following the close of the 1974 season. He would also receive room, board, and traveling expenses during preseason training and during the regular season. If he survived cuts and made it to the first league game of the season, he would get a $2,500 bonus. If he got 25 passes in the regular season, he would earn a $2,000 bonus. If he got 30 passes, he'd get another $3,000. Randy was required to keep himself in top physical condition, avoid drinking, stay away from gambling, and wear a coat and necktie in hotel lobbies, public restaurants, and all, quote, public conveyances. There was no clause regarding convictions for crimes because they didn't think he already had a record. Obviously, he did have a record, and he added to it in Wisconsin real quick. Actually, before he went to Wisconsin, just 2 days after signing his contract and making his dreams come true, Randy was arrested for public indecency, and sentenced to 5 years probation with mandatory counseling now. No details for this again, maybe just a quick celebratory flash. Just, hey, lady, I'm going to play for the Packers. Just pulls down sweatpants, just whips his dick out. Woo! But then he never followed up on his counseling and was never punished for not going to mandatory treatments. That's cool. His light sentences likely influenced by the fact that he was a student athlete, had a decent job. He was working for Tektronix in Beaverton. Tektronix known for manufacturing test and measurement devices. Another factor is something that's come up many times before in other episodes, and that's just prison overcrowding. Randy received a paid plane ticket to attend training camp in Scottsdale, Arizona. He would save every single communication he received from the team. Randy focused solely on football in the spring and summer of 1974. Or more realistically, mostly focused on football, with a little bit of his focus being spent flashing his dick around town. His training went well in Scottsdale. He returned to Portland to await further instructions from the Packers. And those instructions were to add some muscle and work on his pass receiving skills. Sounded like his speed was good. June, he received another paid airline ticket to travel to Green Bay, Wisconsin. Randy chose to drive his car over there instead. In July of 1974, the Green Bay Press-Gazette sought out Randy for a quick little quote. Didn't say much, but he said, "I'm pretty excited. I'm just really thankful for the opportunity." Unfortunately, Randy did not perform as well as he hoped in Green Bay, or hoped he would. He was cut from the 47-member traveling squad August 19th, 1974. Randy later said the Packers treated him, quote, more as a tackling dummy than anything else. His NFL dream, not quite totally dead, though. Randy remained in Green Bay. He was given a roster spot for the Packers farm team at that time, the Manitowoc Chiefs. From September to December of 1974, also worked as a press brake operator for the Oshkosh Truck Corporation. Randy was not ready to give up yet. Still had hopes of playing for the Packers, but following his one season with the Chiefs, he was completely cut from the Packers organization. Randy will say he was dropped because he continually tensed up and missed passes, and also that the Packers were more focused on their run game as opposed to their passing game. Packers would not comment as to the exact reason he was cut. However, 7 years later, Marion County, Oregon detective Dave Kamenek heard rumors that there were between 10 and 20 indecent exposure incidents that were reported in Wisconsin involving fucking Randy Woodfield, or likely involving him. Dear God, a Wisconsin detective commented off the record he couldn't keep the thing in his pants. Clearly not. That's fucking insane. 10 to 20, not even there for a year. How many other incidents did that Wisconsin detective not know about? Dude really needed some counseling. This guy was truly addicted to whipping his dick out. Can you imagine getting fired from your fucking dream job just because you keep taking your dick out of your pants? Like before you get fired for months, you're meeting with HR every day. Just, Hello, Randy. I think we both know why you're back here in my office. It wasn't my fault this time. Come on. I got my dick caught in my zipper, and I needed to get it out before I hurt myself. And right after I freed it, Susan just happened to walk around the corner. I was seconds away from zipping my pants back up. I promise. If that's true, Randy, why did Susan say that you were erect and beating off? What? Come on, Mike. That's not true. She's lying. Is she, Randy? Because Donna, Maria, LaToya, Akira, Janet also saw you beating off. I'm sure others did as well. Okay. I was just making sure that it still worked. Just in case I needed to go to the doctor. I didn't think anyone was near me. Randy, you were beating off directly in front of the water cooler. And you were saying stuff while you beat off. Like, yeah, buddy. Come on, ladies. Give little Randall a kiss. Watch him spit. Okay. I'll stop. Pinky swear. It'll never happen again. Jesus Christ, Randy. Why is your dick out right now? I thought my pants were zipped up. Randy returned to Portland from Wisconsin completely devastated. Probably limp. He felt like a failure, disappointment. And he should have felt like that, right? He was disappointment. Stop showing your fucking stupid dick around, you idiot. He thought there was no point returning to school, even though he just had 3 terms left until graduation. He didn't want to go to school if he couldn't play football. So instead, Randy gets a job at an electronics firm and works part-time at a bar. He shares an apartment with Tim Rossi, an old friend from Portland State. Dates a lot in his spare time, it said. Sometimes saw old friends from high school. Told him he was cut from the Packers for flinching on the line was another reason he gave for not making the team. Randy was depressed after realizing his football dream was never going to happen now. Then his depression turned to rage, and then he directed that rage at women. In early 1975, the Portland police received multiple reports from women who were accosted at knife point and sexually assaulted by a man prowling Portland's Dunaway Park. Randy is done just expose himself. He doesn't want you to just see his dick anymore. He wants you to touch it and to put it in your mouth. The attacker would expose himself and force victims to perform oral sex. Also, he would steal their purses. He snuck up on them so quietly they didn't have time to scream. Several victims described the man looking like, Randy. The police did stakeouts in the area, but the suspect never showed up. Not until Officer Annette Jolin volunteered herself to be used as a decoy. Officer Jolin walked down park pathways alone at night, backup officers waiting in the distance. She did this several times with no results until the night of March 5th, 1975. That evening, Jolin got the sense that somebody was following her. She heard footsteps behind her. She turned. A knife was quickly pressed against her throat. The suspect demanded money. She handed him $8 bills, the serial numbers of which had been recorded. Then the man groped her breasts for a few moments, then retreated down the trail. Before he got very far, officers on the perimeter arrested him. As he walked out of the park, he identified himself as Randall Woodfield. Hail Officer Jolin, right? That is some dangerous fucking shit to do. That's, wow. She is currently a professor at Portland State University, got her PhD, teaches in the Criminology and Criminal Justice Department, where she was the chair for many years. I love that. On April 29th, 1975, Randy pled guilty to the reduced charge of second-degree robbery. Oral sodomy charges against previous victims were dropped in exchange for this plea. And I hate this kind of shit so much. However, this time he would not avoid prison because he threatened an officer with a knife, grabbed her breasts, and was carrying a gun with him when he was arrested. Before sentencing on June 4th, Randy was sent to the Diagnostic Center of the Oregon State Department of Human Resources. Here, he openly talked about his, quote, problem, said he was totally guilty of robbing Officer Jolin. Doesn't mention squeezing her tits, just the robbing part. Said he was very sorry, deeply hurt that he had caused problems, but was relieved to have been caught. Randy explained that his life collapsed 3 years earlier because of his, quote, sexual problems. He said that in college, he found he could not cope with his sexuality and that he experienced a string of what he called bad luck. Lost his girlfriend, had his car stolen, then dropped out of school. What does he mean here by sexuality? A penchant for flashing? I'm not sure. He said that he then met 2 religious friends who introduced him to Christianity, but he wasn't able to follow the teachings of Christ because of his damn sexual compulsions. Fucking devil just kept forcing him to whip his dick out. Randy knew his sexual impulses were out of control. He didn't understand why, because he didn't use drugs, hadn't had alcohol since he became a Christian in 1972. I like his mentality here, right? That's why. That's why he's probably whipping his dick out, because maybe he had a couple beers one time. He did, however, take steroids, though. He said he thought that may have been a contributing factor to his whipping his dick out. Mentioned he tried to cut back on dating because he thought, quote, removing himself from sexual opportunity would contain his, epic lust. Randy admitted that he robbed the victims because he needed money and was too proud to borrow from family. He would not admit to the sexual assaults, though. This is something with him. And also, get the fuck out of here. Why are you robbing women? Because it's not because you need money. If you're also making them suck your dick, always half admission at best from these shitheads. He had just $57.50 in the bank before he was arrested. He owed almost $3,000 for a school loan and $300 to his parents for gas he used to drive to Green Bay. So he did need money. However, in total, he had stolen less than $25 from all the robberies he had committed combined. Clearly, sex is the motivation, not money. Randy was given an IQ test, scored around 100, which was surprisingly low given his academic history. There were certain aspects of Randy's personality that were concerning to the psychologist who interviewed him, including his detachment from his crimes, the fact that he used a knife, and the fact that he touched his victims and, wouldn't admit it. The psychologist wrote, "It would be my opinion that Mr. Woodfield's problem is so severe as to be a very serious threat to the community. And although treating him as an outpatient might actually present him with a greater opportunity to be treated, I think this would present too great a risk to the community. For the safety of the community, he needs to be in an institutional setting. However, chances of being successfully treated in such a setting are rather dim." Interesting diagnosis, right? That felt like a very nice way of saying, this guy is so fucked in the head, I don't know if he can be fixed. Already, someone's thinking that. June 10th, 1975, Randy Woodfield sentenced to 10 years in prison. So fuck yeah, bro. Hail Lucifina. Judge opined that Randy should be put in a program for sexually dangerous offenders at the Oregon State Hospital's psychiatric unit. But Randy instead is sent into the general population. There's no explanation for that. Maybe the program didn't have open slots, possibly more overcrowding. Randy was very angry regarding his sentence. Didn't feel like it was fair, right? Of course he didn't. His anger was aggravated by the fact that some of his prison guards were then women. I love this. I guess he got really, really upset that female guards had access to the showers and toilets. How dare they see his dick in moments when he doesn't feel like showing it to them, when he doesn't have time to get it fucking hard. Randy would say, "I was in there for being an exhibitionist, and here's this female guard watching me take a piss. It was ironic and it made me angry." But also, motherfucker, feels kind of fair, doesn't it? He attended group therapy sponsored by the Oregon State Hospital, but it did not go well. In one session, he became irate when a nurse asked the group to share their sexual fantasies. Randy then told the nurse, "You share your sexual fantasies with us, then I might share mine with you." The nurse declined, because that's not how group therapy works, and then wrote him up for being antagonistic. I'm guessing the real reason Randy didn't share his fantasies with the group is because his fantasies were probably dark as fuck, and he didn't want to face having them. Most of Randy's prison infractions while he was incarcerated were pretty minor. For example, he grew out his beard, had a pair of Nike high tops smuggled inside, claimed he had weak knees and ankles, needed more shoe support. By 1976, Randy adjusted to prison life. He's able to make friends, largely because his conviction did not reflect the reality of his crimes, right? There was no mention of sexual assault. Randy worked in the dining room and kitchen, took college courses, earned A's and B's in typing, accounting, computer programming, economy, and ironically, human sexuality. He eventually became involved in group therapy. Also joined the Masters Men's Bible Club, the Freedom in Christ group, and an informal Bible study group. While in prison, his grandmother, both sisters, mom and dad, 3 friends, and 2 unnamed, quote, Christian girls visited him. He maintained his fitness by playing basketball, running, and lifting weights. One of his favorite things to do was to brag to other inmates about his time spent with the Packers. Oh, hell yeah. I guess he changed the story quite a bit for them. Probably told them he did make the team, of course. Going to be the primary fucking wide receiver, WR1, but blew a knee or something in training camp. Randy also spent time thinking about what caused his uncontrollable sexual impulses. He speculated to prison psychologists that it was all his ex-girlfriend's fault and that he wanted to get back at a girl for something. Why am I like this? Sharon McNeil, that's why. If she would have been more fun sexually and been cool with some role play, some fun role play, harmless, where I'm a robber and I force her to suck my dick at knife point, or where she's a jogger and I'm a scary rapist in the park and I brutally sodomize her and choke her unconscious, but she's such a prude. She didn't even like my cool foreplay where I pretend to not be home when she walks in the door. And then I wait for her to, go use the bathroom and then gotcha! I fucking pop out from behind the door with a ski mask on and a hard dick in my hand. And saying some romantic stuff like, suck my dick, bitch, I'll fucking kill you. And now because of her, I have to console myself with forcing strangers to suck my cock in a park. There you Making this scapegoating some obvious bullshit. Randy had been exposing himself for about 6 years before his college breakup with Sharon. And also, obviously being ridiculous there, he never admits in any of these therapy sessions, to my knowledge, that he sexually assaulted anybody. He admitted that he exposed himself, but never forced himself. While Randy would say in therapy that he did not struggle with feelings of inadequacy, his actions would prove otherwise. The psychologist felt he focused so much of on his appearance because he was insecure. And he exposed himself so he'd feel more masculine. Also in 1976, Randy told a prison psychologist, "What's going to help me is not getting involved with the girl physically. I always felt kind of guilty about sex. There's more to life than sex." Well, this is not a healthy attitude. His problems were probably tied at least partly to feelings of shame regarding sex. Now he's making sex more shameful. Sex is not the problem. His attitude towards sex is the problem. Randy said his goals after prison were finding a wife and raising a family. I doubt it. He insisted that he was not a violent person, but his psychologists did not buy this. They thought he was a liar. In early parole hearings, they recommended against his release. So then Randy learned how to play the system. He knew what the counselors wanted to hear. He started to tell them that he accepted his guilt and he needed help. That he would be, that would be the first thing he did if he got out, get help. He also mentioned he had some family support and a former employer willing to hire him again. Randy said, "I've come to the point where I'm beginning to accept myself and stop being a phony. I know I have a problem and I have to keep on top of it at all times. I've learned to accept rejection from others, especially females. I don't take it personally anymore. It's taken me 27 years to grow up, but I'm making it now. I have excellent family support. I used to be ashamed to admit that I had a problem, but I found out in Reverend Beach's group that other guys have problems, and if they can overcome them, well, I can too. I am not the same immature fellow that I used to be. I used to just want to play football and have fun, but now I know that work is important. I've got to stop running and face myself for what I am. I have now got the courage and confidence to face my problems directly. I no longer feel a need to hide from them." This is all bullshit. Sadly, the counselor bought it and wrote the following evaluation. "Woodfield's attitude is excellent. This interviewer has met with him many times and has come to know of Woodfield's sincere desire to change. Given Woodfield's good intelligence and abilities, his sound support from others in the community, his insights into himself, his remorse for what he has done, and his sincere desire to change, his long-term prognosis is favorable. He is a fitting candidate for work release, and it would be a good transitional move for him to make. It would help to bolster his self-confidence and give him time to readjust to being free again in society. He is not an escape risk, nor is he a violence risk." Oh, yes, he is. Randy is paroled July 6, 1979, after serving less than 4 years in prison, and now it's party time. While still in prison, he corresponded with his old friend Alex Carter to organize a 10-year high school reunion, August 25th, 1979. This cannot be common. For a dude in prison to help organize his 10-year high school class reunion. I can't wait to tell everybody what I've been up to. Oh, getting cut from the Packers, for flashing my dick around Wisconsin, spending the last 4 years in prison for robbing, squeezing the tits of a police officer, trying to stop me from robbing other women, making them suck my dick. No one's gonna have better stories than me. There was quite the turnout for this reunion, I guess, and Randy enjoyed socializing with his classmates. I picture him literally having his dick exposed the entire time. Just like barely kind of like pokes it out of his fucking zipper. Gets off on knowing that it's looking around the room. After getting out of prison, Randy returned to the Portland area, briefly lived with his sister Nancy till he got back on his feet. Got his old job with Tektronix back. Earned $600 a month plus overtime. Randy was assigned to parole officer Judy Pulliam, which made him bristle because, she has a vagina. And he hates women who have authority over him. First, Mama got to tell him what to do, and his sisters. And then Sharon wouldn't just let him fuck her however he wanted to, whenever he wanted to, and now Judy's up his ass. Ugh. He reported regularly at first, but then became lax as time passed. He tended to move often, which made it difficult to keep track of him. Randy also started to date a lot, later admitted that he got herpes from one of the girls he first dated after prison, which will become relevant during his later trial. July of 1979, Randy followed two pretty young women down I5, motioned for them to pull over so he could strike up a conversation. One of the girls was Moira, there we go, my God, Moira Bandit, and the two started dating. By mid-August, she and Randy were living together. Then Moira was angry and hurt when she found out he gave her herpes. Moira eventually forgave Randy. They continued to see each other until November, when they had a fight, and now Randy moved out. More rejection. More rage. He eventually quits his job with Tektronix, starts bartending full-time, which allows him to meet women more often. Underage girls love him because he is not strict about checking IDs if they're cute. Sounds like Randy. Randy normally lied about his age on job applications so he wouldn't have to explain that he was ever in prison. Randy's first job after Tektronix was at the Cheerful Tortoise Lounge in Portland. I love that name. His coworkers noticed that he was fixated on teenage girls there. Randy soon left the Cheerful Tortoise to work at the Fawcett Tavern in the Portland suburb of Beaverton. Hired on April 9th, 1980 as a bartender and assistant manager. He earned $250 a week plus tips. He was fired roughly 6 months later on October 1st. His employer said Randy was not able to assert the proper authority for the job. He couldn't deal with rowdy drunks or earn the employees' respect. Also, too soft on cute young girls. Within a couple weeks of his dismissal, $3,000 was stolen from the register. There were no signs of forced entry. Randy was the only person, though, besides the owners who had a key. So that's, obviously suspicious. When the owners went to Randy's home to confront him, they found him literally hiding in his attic. He denied stealing from them and was furious that accused him in the first place. But then he would later admit to a female friend that he did rob them. His former employees found out about this. They talked. Word got around that Mr. Woodfield was a thief, which made it difficult for Randy to get another bartending job in the area. He's not sad about it, though, because now it was looking like he was going to become a model, kind of. In May 1980, Randy receives a little ego boost. He received a letter from Playgirl magazine. Of course he did. Randy, not surprisingly, had a long history of sending nude pics of himself to women he dated, or women he disliked, or women who were his friends. No one has ever loved showing their dick around more than Randall Woodfield. If he's not flashing women, he's sending women dick pics in the mail. If this dude was young now, he'd be a fucking menace online. Right? He'd be DMing, texting, emailing dick pics to dozens of women a day. Anyway, in late 1979, he had sent a photo of himself, a nude photo, to Playgirl magazine, and now Playgirl informed him that he had been selected for potential publication in their Guy Next Door feature. A representative from Playgirl told him they will notify him which issue he has been selected for. Oh, Randy is excited. He is rock hard. So many women about to see his sweet, sweet hog, his pride and joy. He looked through each month's edition to see if his pic was published, but alas, it was not. So, tells me his dick was, probably solid for him to show it off so much, but not like exquisite, not centerfold material. And I'm surprised. I mean, the way he's been loving showing it off, I expected him to have the Brad Pitt or Idris Elba of cocks, right? But I guess not. I think I said Idris Elba there. Might have said Idris Elba. Whatever. I thought he had a super handsome cock. By the late spring of 1980, now 29-year-old Randy is living with 17-year-old Lucy Grant, loves a teenager. She's working as a cocktail waitress with a fake ID. They signed a lease June 10th, 1980 for a house in Lake Grove, about 10 miles from Portland. Randy was in love with Lucy, thought she loved him, but disliked how she brought her guy friends over when he was trying to sleep. Well, she is still literally a kid, you douche. But also, I would dislike that as well. I would not really love Lindsay bringing guy friends over to our house after I've gone to bed, no less. And she would hate the reverse of that. She gets more jealous than I do. Those ladies might get stabbed. Although he professed to be in love, Randy was not in love. He was still going out, trying to meet as many women as possible, and of course, flashing people. And then Randy meets 17-year-old Julie Wrights in August of 1980 while still working at the Fawcett Tavern. Of course, dating one 17-year-old, pursuing another. He knew Julie was underage, let her in anyway. Julie flirted with him, later met him for a lunch date. And then one evening, Randy and Julie went out for drinks, returned to Julie's home with one of her friends. Her mom wasn't home that night. She's fucking still in high school. Randy ended up disappointed when the girls shared a room and then he slept alone. In the morning, he went into the girl's room, wearing nothing but his underwear. I'm sure they were fucking tight, showing that hog. He got into bed with them, fondled Julie, but then left when she asked him to leave. She was not into it. But she was fascinated by Randy. But then she was angry when she found out that he was with another girl. She went to a bar, saw him with his living girlfriend, Lucy Grant. Then Randy and Lucy break up in the fall of 1980 when Lucy tells Randy she thinks that she should be able to see other men. Randy's heartbroken, rejected once again. Randy's former roommate, Tim Rossi, had also been through a breakup recently. Tim had left Portland to go to Tacoma, Washington to accept an assistant professorship at Pacific Lutheran University, which then strained his relationship with his girlfriend, Darcy. Darcy started seeing someone else, Darcy Fix, but she and Tim remained on friendly terms. Tim told Randy about the breakup, though. They broke up when Randy visited him October 11th, 1980. Randy was furious. The Darcy dumped his friend. In the back of his mind, he plotted revenge. Why not hurt her? Right? He was already attacking women, random women again, more violently now. Around midnight, October 10th, 1980, one of Randy's old high school classmates, 29-year-old Sherry Ayers, was raped and murdered in her Portland home. Sherry had graduated from Newport High with Randy in 1969. The two had recently worked together on the 1979 10-year class reunion. At the time of her death, Sherry had just graduated from med school and was working in Portland as a radiologic technologist. Her fiancé found her body at 9 p.m. October 11th when he entered their bedroom. Sherry had been bludgeoned in the head, stabbed in the neck. And what name did her family give the police when they asked if they could think of anyone who might have done this to Sherry? Randy Woodfield. Detective learned that Randy had visited Sherry many times at her home when he first moved to Portland after being paroled. Maybe too many times. Something happened between the two that led to him no longer coming around. Randy was questioned. The detective thought his responses to questions about his whereabouts were evasive and deceptive, and then he refused to take a polygraph. The detective read through Randy's prison records, learned his blood type was B negative. Secretions found in Sherry's vagina were not B negative, which eliminated Randy as a suspect, but the detective was not fully convinced he was innocent. Yeah, that detective will be proven correct in this assumption years later. For now, Randy does not let this little brush with the law get in the way of his dating life. Anne Rule, the lady who wrote the kind of definitive book on him again, wrote, once he had made some contact with a woman, however tentative, he wanted to keep her in his stable. He bombarded her with calls and clever cards and drop-in visits to be sure that she remembered him and considered him important. He used the telephone compulsively, running up huge long-distance bills. That was necessary to ensure that all of his women remembered him. He often called late at night to remind them that he was thinking of them. Yeah, he's definitely fucked up here. He's a weirdo. Randy normally preferred younger women, as we've seen, and he typically met women in bars. Most of them, when questioned later by Anne Rule, investigators and others looking into this case, seemed to have thought that he came on way too strong. Within minutes of asking for a woman's name, he was telling her that he could see himself falling in love with her. He was often begging to go home with her, right, to spend the night. And then if he was rejected, he would just quickly move on. And Randy was rejected constantly, but also plenty of women said yes to him, right? He was just a shameless numbers guy. Some of these women only agreed to date just to get him to leave them alone. Randy would then be furious when the woman didn't show up for the date, and then let his anger fuel future crimes. Thanksgiving Day, 1980, the dead bodies of 22-year-old Darcy Fix and her boyfriend, 24-year-old Doug Atlig, found in Darcy's apartment in Portland. Or Altig, excuse me, not Atlig, Altig. Remember Darcy, right? Randy's former roommate, Tim Rossi's girlfriend, who broke up with him. The woman Randy wanted to punish for that. Both of these people were shot execution style. Tim Rossi discovered what happened to his ex-girlfriend November 28th during a phone call with Randy. Tim told the police he saw Darcy and Doug together November 25th. Nothing seemed off at the time. He asked if Darcy was able to reach for her gun to protect herself. Tim had seen it on the floor next to her bed when he had visited. Her father had given her that gun, which he described as an old .32 chrome revolver that was never registered. This gun was the only item missing from Darcy's apartment, and to this day has never been found. Towards the end of 1980, Randy was considering leaving Portland. He was on edge after being questioned in connection with the Sherry Ayers murder. He was also engaged in a criminal side hustle with his friend, a friend of his from prison named Douglas Handy. Yep, Randy and Handy. Not Handy Randy. That title still belongs to Randy Weaver from the Ruby Ridge Timesuck episode. Now we got Randy and Handy. The two of them had teamed up together to commit some robberies. They'd robbed the Fawcett Tavern, where Randy used to work, then a Safeway in Vancouver, followed by numerous other places. Handy told Randy, I love that all he had to do was put some strips of athletic tape across the bridge of his nose and no witness would be able to describe him later. Right? It disguises your look a lot more than you would think it would. Considering what later crimes he will be linked with, this tape detail, very, very important. Randy did this and often would add a fake beard to his disguise when working with Handy. Randy would also use a toy gun during the robberies with Handy. And for their getaway car, sometimes Handy and Randy would use Randy's car, Champagne Edition Gold's Volkswagen Bug, but normally they would use Handy's vehicle. And now, after numerous robberies committed by the infamous duo of Randy and Handy, the 1980 Oregon edition of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Randy actively is making plans to leave Portland. Wants to leave and go 70 miles south and live in the Eugene area. At the end of 1980 and in early 1981, residents along the I-5 corridor in Oregon, Northern California, and Washington are now terrorized by a man who quickly becomes known in the press as the I-5 Bandit, a bandit who loves some tape across his nose. The suspect committed a string of robberies in various locations, typically targeting female workers who were alone or with another woman. In numerous cases, women were sexually assaulted. It would take months for the authorities to connect these robberies, which eventually escalated to include not only sexual assaults, but also murder. It would take even longer for authorities to realize that Randy Woodfield was the I-5 Bandit and the man who would eventually become the I-5 Killer. Randy was on police radar when this crime spree began, though, because several women associated with him were murdered during this time frame, as we saw with the Sherry Ayers case. 5:20 p.m., December 9th, 1980, 22-year-old cashier, at Eddie's Arco Station in Vancouver, Washington, just across the Columbia River from Portland, Oregon, was robbed by a tall, dark-haired man wearing a fake beard. Woman told the police that the man showed her a small silver gun, said, "It's for real," right? Is this possibly Darcy's dad's gun, the gun that was given to her? She handed over all the money in the register. He told her to turn around and watch TV, referring to the surveillance camera. This camera was not working on the night of the robbery, but the victim was able to help create a composite sketch of the robber, one of many composite sketches that'll be created in this case, or in this string of crimes, and all of them will look a lot like Randy. December 13th, down in Eugene, Oregon, a man wearing a fake beard and a bandage across his nose walked into a Baskin-Robbins at 6 p.m., brandished a silver pistol, forcing the female cashier to hand over the money in the register. The robber ordered the cashier to walk into a back room and stay there. She did, and in this case was unharmed. December 14th, two 18-year-old clerks at the Arctic Circle Drive-In in Albany, Oregon, 45 miles from Eugene. Actually, I think it's pronounced Arctic, but that always sounds a little harsh to me. Watched as a bearded man walked up to the drive-in window holding a used Arctic Circle bag and a paper cup. He asked one of the girls to throw the bag away and fill his cup with water, and then asked for a fresh bag. He watched the traffic while he talked. Then, when there were no cars passing by, he gave the fresh bag to the clerk and told her, "Fill it up." She was confused until he pointed a silver gun at her chest. The girl was so scared she forgot which buttons to press to open the register, so her coworker had to do it. Girls ended up filling the bag with $280, and then the robber took off. Those girls also unharmed, but the next woman will not be so lucky. December 21st, a man with the same description appears in the Seattle area, over 200 miles away, but still near I-5, still on the I-5 corridor. 25-year-old Kim Meehan was waitressing at Church's Fried Chicken in Lake Forest Park, 15 miles north of Seattle. She felt sick, so she called her dad at 9 p.m., asked him to pick her up. She went to the restroom to wash her face with cold water, heard a knock on the door, and then a bearded man pushed his way in. He said, "Excuse me," then locked the door behind him. He quickly pulled a silver gun out of his coat pocket, ordered Kim to take her shirt off. He told her she would not get hurt if she just did what he said. Kim was shocked. She couldn't believe this was happening to her while other employees were still in the building. She was too scared to move, so the man lifted up her shirt and bra, touched her breasts. He then told her he wanted her to beat him off. She tried to say she didn't know how, but he told her he would show her, and then he put the gun close to her head. Now Kim did what he said until the man ejaculated onto her breasts. Afterwards, he told her to stay in the bathroom for 5 minutes and then nobody would get hurt, and then left the restaurant. Kim waited the full 5 minutes before she screamed for help. How extra fucked to be sexually assaulted just a few feet away from your coworkers and customers, with your dad coming to pick you up, no less. The fry cook called the police, provided a description of the man. He said, "I can't believe it. That guy was in here. He ordered a number 5 dinner, paid for it. He must have seen Kim walk back to the restroom. He was wearing a hooded brown corduroy or suede jacket with the sheepskin lining." Kim mentioned that his beard looked fake. Just 20 minutes later, a man in a brown jacket, this time without a beard, ordered an ice cream cone at a Baskin-Robbins in Bothell, Washington, about 4 miles away from Lake Forest Park. 2 teen girls were working. We're getting ready to close at 10 p.m. The man was still in the store, though. The man asked him to throw away the remainder of his cone. Then he asked for some water, took a sip, asked for a lid, then a straw and a paper bag, and then pulled out a revolver, ordered them to put all the money into the bag. The register had over $500. Finally, the robber ordered the girls to sit on the floor, count to 50, and look away as he left. They are lucky he didn't also assault them. These girls were able to give a detailed description to the police. They said that he looked like he was in his mid-20s, handsome, tan with a full mustache, dark brown curly hair, wore blue jeans, a maroon and blue rugby shirt with white trim at the neck, and a brown suede jacket with sheepskin lining. And his revolver was silver. Randy, at this time, I should note, did look pretty young for his age. December 30th, 1980, Randy is staying at the New Oregon Motel in Eugene, looking for a new place to live. And that evening, he meets the new love of his life, 21-year-old Cynthia Edgman. A little old for him. Spending Christmas with her father in Eugene. Cynthia was a student at the University of New Mexico. She's described as a very beautiful girl who didn't have much luck with love, but was still a hopeless romantic. You know, someone who believed her perfect match was out there, her soulmate. And on this night, on December 30th, Cynthia went to O'Callahan's in Eugene with a friend to scout out some New Year's Eve parties that they might want to go to. They were on the dance floor when a handsome man approached. Cynthia was attracted to him immediately and initiated a conversation. And Randy must have loved that, to be approached instead of vice versa. I wonder if he was dancing with his cock out. Maybe that caught her eye, right? Maybe he was breakdancing, doing some kind of spin move. where he balances all his weight on the tip of his dick instead of his head, and then spins around like a helicopter blade. Fucking sick, bro. He said his name was Randall from Portland and that he was planning to move to Eugene. Told her that he planned to attend the University of Oregon to earn a degree in business and health/physical education, and that he would get a bartending job to pay for school. Cynthia was impressed by his work ethic. Their conversation soon turned to deeper subjects. Randall talked about what he wanted for his future, how he had recently been rejected by a woman in Medford he'd met after taking a trip to the southern Oregon town to visit a friend. Cynthia told Randy she had to go back to Albuquerque in 3 days, but Randy, in his typical, does this dude have borderline personality disorder fashion, was already suggesting a committed relationship. Cynthia later told the detective, "We were shocked to have those incredible feelings so quickly. We just stood there talking about our feelings." Yeah, Cynthia was shocked. I don't doubt that. I don't think Randy was. This is what Randy does all the time. Right? He falls head over heels in love with a couple women a week and wants to rape a couple dozen other women a week at least. Cynthia's friend left the bar at 2 a.m., glad to see her friend so happy. Randy was supposed to take Cynthia home, but they ended up going to his room at the New Oregon Motel instead. Ho-ho! Then Randy, interesting, tells her it's too soon for sex. But he does ask for oral sex. "No, we can't. Oh, no, stop. Things are moving too fast. But I am pretty horny. Could you maybe just suck my dick? Just a little bit. Just until I come, I promise." They visited Cynthia's family then on New Year's Eve. Randy told Cynthia he arranged to rent a room from a divorced mother who lived with her young son. Their house was in Springfield, just east of Eugene. Cynthia went with him to the home of Susan Matz and saw him give her a check for rent. Cynthia and Randy then spent January 1st together. Then she returned to school the following day. While she was away, she wrote to Randy constantly, suggested plans to meet again. And Randy eagerly responded to every letter. Cynthia was in love. Felt so lucky to be with a guy like Randy. She had no idea that he was seeking other women during their brief relationship. A lot of other women. Or what he was up to on his nights he was supposed to be alone. After taking a couple weeks off, the I5 Bandit soon strikes again. 9:18 p.m., January 8th, 1991, a fake bearded man, robbed Eddie's Arco in Vancouver, Washington again. This is the same place that was robbed the month before, December 9th. Cashier is a different woman this time, and she hands over less than $150. Now the robber orders her to sit down on the floor, take off her shirt, and lift her bra. Then this creep stares at her breasts for a little while before smiling and saying either, "Okay," or "ugly," she couldn't remember which, and then just leaves the gas station on foot. And what a fucking asshole. Would that possibly fuck you up maybe even a little bit more than being groped by the stranger? To have the stranger demand that you take your shirt off, and then once you do, they just scan you up and down, and they're like, nah, I'll pass. Such a dick. This time, the security camera was working and captured an image of a tall man with curly hair, fake beard, hooded velour jacket, jeans, and dark gloves. 7:20 p.m., January 11th. The grocery cart market in Eugene, Oregon. Robbed by a gunman with a fake beard, Band-Aid over his nose, hooded jacket, blue jeans, and dark gloves. He asked for Vantage cigarettes and all the money in the register, which was $35. January 12th, very next day, same guy robs the Central Market in Sutherland, Oregon, 50 miles south on I-5. Dude was fucking busy. 20-year-old Susan Bennett was working alone that night. She was watching TV when a tan, tall man wearing a red knit hat and a green windbreaker came in. He had not one but two bandages across his bridge of his nose this time. And he demanded all the money in the register. And Susie actually laughed. She thought he was joking. But then she quickly realized he was serious when he pulled a revolver out of his jacket. She described the gun as nickel-plated with a short barrel. Susie now stood there, scared, as the man became angry, grabbed her by the blouse, let go, and then she heard the gun go off. Susie felt something hit her, but she didn't immediately realize she had just been shot. She walked around the counter to the register. The man followed. Then she noticed she was bleeding as she looked at the right side of her chest near her shoulder. The man directed her to get on the floor, stay down. He opened the register, took $300, left the store. Susie would be lucky to live through this. The bullet passed clean through her, coming within a few inches of piercing her lung. Police would recover the bullet from the crime scene. They also obtained a report from a jogger who saw a Volkswagen Bug parked near the Central Market before the shooting. Same type of car that Randy Woodfield drove. Just 2 days later, I5 Bandit commits his most heinous crime yet. In this case, the victims, two very young kids. January 14th, 1981, in Corvallis, Oregon, 10-year-old Mary Sue Green, her 8-year-old sister Megan, are home alone for 45 minutes while their mom worked out at a local gym. She left home at 5:30, said she would be back by 6:15. Oh, this poor woman. The guilt she must have fucking felt, even though it was not her fault. Despite it not being that late, it was dark out. It's mid-January in Corvallis, right? The sun's setting by 5 p.m. The girls sat down to watch some TV, and then 10 minutes later, their doorbell rang. Mary Sue got up to answer it, flipped on the porch light, but the bulb remained dark. She then opened the door to see a large, strange man standing outside. He wore a brown suede jacket with a hood, blue jeans, blue and white ski gloves, and jogging shoes. Right? Ski gloves detail, scary. The average daily low in Corvallis in January is 36 degrees Fahrenheit. Average high around 49 degrees. This is not ski glove weather. The man entered the house and told Mary Sue his car broke down, that he needed to use the phone. She pointed him towards the kitchen. She didn't want to let him in, but she was scared, right? She didn't know how to get the guy to go away. Yeah, she's fucking 10. I'd be scared. He quickly dialed up some random numbers on the phone, hung up, said the line was busy. Now he asked where her mom was. Without thinking, Mary Sue said that their mom was at the gym. The man then asked the girls, "Can I watch TV with you?" "No," Mary Sue said. Brave kid. I like it. And then she added, "You can call somebody, but then you have to go. We'll wait by the door until you're finished with the phone." The man dialed again, acted like he was speaking to somebody named Jim. Mary Sue thought that was bullshit. Thought he was pretending to have a conversation. She heard the man make arrangements to be picked up near Albertsons supermarket and then asked, "Can I just stay in the house to keep warm? I can watch TV with you until my friend gets here." Again, it's not cold out. Thanks to historical temperature databases, we know it was in the mid-30s when he showed up. Not warm, obviously. Close to freezing, but it's not like it was a fucking blizzard out. Actually didn't snow at all that day or rain. He didn't need to be dressed like this. Mary Sue now said, "No, I told you no. We're not supposed to let strangers in." He's like, "But I'm already in." 8-year-old Megan now whispers, "I'm scared," and then runs into the primary bathroom. The man insists on watching TV. Mary Sue tells him no through the door now. The door. And then he pulls out a silver gun, grabs her by the shoulder. He doesn't tell him, she doesn't tell him no through the door. Her sister is through the door. She is still with him in the living room. Sorry about that. And then he pulls out a silver gun, grabs her by the shoulder, warns her it's a real gun, orders her to go into the bathroom with her sister. Now, once both girls are in the bathroom, the man, it's Randy, orders them to take their clothes off, and then he sexually assaults both kids. He fondles them, makes both of them perform oral sex on him. Then this fucking psycho makes fun of their bodies, complaining about their lack of breasts. Then after he's finished, he toys with his gun for a while, seeming to enjoy making them think he might still shoot them. Finally, he tells the girls to get dressed and stay in the bathroom. The girl's mother arrives home at 6:10. She's terrified because the front door is left open, the phone's off the hook, and the receiver is not in the kitchen. When she calls out for the girls, Mary Sue answers, "Can we come out now?" Mary Sue tells her mom, "There's a burglar in the house. I think he's still here." Mother grabs the girls, runs to her neighbor's house, and they call 911. Mary Sue and Megan are able to give a detailed description, noticing details like the San Francisco label on the man's jeans, white X's on the back. Mary Sue mentions that she didn't think the man's beard or gun was real. At this time, the police did not even suspect the attack on the Green Girls was connected to the recent armed robberies, since the perpetrator did not take anything from the home. So Randy has gone full fucking evil now. Oh man, the memories he fucking leaves those kids with. Days later, the I5 Bandit becomes the I5 killer. Randy's killed before, but now the police think they have an I5 killer. 9:54 p.m., January 18th, 1981, the Salem Fire and Ambulance Dispatch Hotline receives a call. Zenna Harp answers the phone. She hears a woman's voice say, "We've been shot. Please help us." When Zenna asks for location, the woman pauses for a long time before she says she's on River Road or Commercial Street near some place called the Fun Machine. The Fun Machine, I can't figure out what type of business it was located on the outskirts of Salem, Oregon, near the city of Kaiser. Zena's partner was able to get an emergency trace, discovered that the call was coming from the Transamerica Title Building in Kaiser. Transamerica Title Building, one of several in a business complex on River Road, just beyond Salem's city limits. Complex was practically empty because it was a Sunday evening and most businesses were closed. The girl pleaded, "Please hurry. He's going to come back and kill me. I think she's dead." Zena assured her that an ambulance was on the way. The call was then transferred to Salem Police Dispatcher Liz Cameron. A woman identified herself as Lisa Garcia. She said, "I've been shot in the head. Hurry." She was asked who shot her and answered, "Some man, I don't know, with a gun." Lisa said she and her friend, whom she identified as Sherry Hull, were cleaning the office building when the man came in. She described him as a white man in his late 20s, around 5'9" to 6 foot, dark brown hair and average build. He wore a Band-Aid across the bridge of his nose and was wearing a leather coat and jeans. Gotta be our guy, right? Other fucking white dude was robbing and raping and shooting with dark hair and a Band-Aid on his nose in Oregon at this time. Actually, I'm not sure I've ever heard of anyone using a Band-Aid or athletic tape on their nose like this guy to commit these kind of crimes. Lisa indicated that Sherry had also been shot and that she thought she was dying. Reserve Deputy Greg Roach was the first officer to arrive on the scene. Transamerica building had large windows that made it easy to see inside. Roach saw a naked woman in the main office. She was walking towards a smaller office in the southwest corner of the building. A second naked woman was lying on the floor with a pool of blood around her head. Roach entered the building without backup because he didn't want the women to die. He quickly cleared the entire building by himself so that paramedics could now enter and help them. So hail Deputy Roach, right? Risking his life to help save these two women and also keep EMT safe. Lisa Garcia was unsurprisingly in shock. She had a black eye. The right side of her face was swollen and bruised. Blood was oozing from a spot near her ear. Sherry Hull was still alive, but barely. She was comatose and her vitals were low. She had been shot 3 times, and all 3 times were in the head. Lisa was coherent enough to give a statement to the deputy riding with her in the ambulance. She explained that she and her best friend Sherry cleaned the building every Sunday. She said, "We were almost finished. Sherry went outside to her car, and I had a little cleaning left to do. I was just rounding a corner, coming toward the entrance, when I saw Sherry and this man walking towards me. He had a long-barreled gun in his right hand. He took us to a room, told us to take off all our clothes, that he wouldn't hurt us. He made us lie down on the floor. We did that, and then he shot Sherry in the head, and then he shot me. I pretended to be dead. I could hear Sherry moaning. Then I heard another shot and heard him, the man, leave. When I was pretty sure he was gone, I crawled to the phone in the office and called the fire department." Initially, Lisa said that the man did not rape them and that she didn't touch him. She was too embarrassed to admit what had happened. Fortunately, she'll give more details soon to investigators so they can help, find this sick fuck. At this time, she described the assailant as a white man in his mid-20s, 5'11" to 6 foot, slender with dark brown hair, wearing a hooded black leather waist-length jacket. And guess what he had on his nose? Yeah, of course, a Band-Aid. Sherry Hull will die in the ER at 1:20 a.m. She would never regain consciousness. Bernie Pappenfuss, the deputy who rode in the ambulance with Lisa, had an important realization while waiting for her in the ER. While initially responding to the emergency call, he rounded the corner of Broadway and Pine Street around 10:04 p.m. He had just heard the dispatcher's description of the suspect, which matched Lisa's description from the ambulance. And when he turned the corner, he spotted a man in a well-lit area just 10 feet from his patrol car. Dude just stared at him. He was wearing jeans and a fleece jacket, one that looked like it was turned inside out. They were 1.2 miles from the crime scene. Only someone in top physical condition could run that distance in that time, in like a short amount of time, but it was possible. When Deputy Pappenfuss saw the man, he radioed for a better description, but at that moment, another deputy radioed that the gunman might still be in the building. Pappenfuss then rushed to the scene. Now he had a bad feeling that the man he saw in the street was the shooter and that he had missed arresting him. But at least he did know that this dude was very athletic, real athletic. Ran almost like he nearly made it into the NFL as a wide receiver. At the hospital, doctors discovered a flattened bullet lodged in the matted hair at the back of Lisa's head. It had miraculously not penetrated her skull. Even more miraculously, a second bullet penetrated her scalp at the back of her head, but also did not penetrate her skull. That motherfucker shot her in the head twice at point-blank range, and neither bullet entered her skull. Both bullets were turned over to the police. Lisa initially denied being sexually assaulted, as I mentioned, but then a swab of her throat revealed the presence of semen. And she'll soon share details of her horrific assault with investigators. Meanwhile, Salem detective Dave Kamenek is processing the crime scene. He's going to become a key player in the I5 investigation. The office manager also came to the scene, found nothing missing, which meant theft was not the motive. Sherry Hull's father explained he owned a janitorial service with no set hours, and Lisa and Sherry were assigned to clean that building. Poor bastard, he probably thought about how if he hadn't given a job to his daughter, she'd still be alive. He told investigators that his daughter and Lisa must have gotten to the building late because they should have finished before 9 p.m. Unfortunately, the crime scene was contaminated by paramedics who went inside to save the girls. Nothing could be done about that. The girls' red Ford Bronco was parked outside with the engine still running. The attack took place in the lunchroom where there were 2 pools of blood, scattered clothing on the floor, and 2 .32 caliber bullets. There was also blood on the walls and carpet and smears of blood on the phone. Investigators bagged all the evidence, took samples of the blood, and vacuumed to collect gunpowder, hairs, and other debris. During Sherry's autopsy, the medical examiner found bullets in the left side of her neck, right side of her skull, back of her head, and a 4th exit wound. She suffered a skull fracture on the right side of her head, had fragments in her right temple that destroyed the center of her brain. Her hair was blackened with debris, which meant the barrel of the gun was very close to her head when the assailant fired. With the bullets recovered, detectives were able to compile a list of potential weapons to save for future comparison. Based on the semen sample from Lisa's body, the crime lab determined the killer had type A or type B blood. Detectives also found 1 pubic hair that did not match Sherry or Lisa. Detective Dave Kamenek had to locate all the paramedics and police who responded to the scene, ask for samples of their pubic hair. Fun. So they had to pluck out their pubic hair. None of their pubic hairs were a match. Lisa Garcia gave her official statement to Detective Kamenek about being sexually assaulted the next day, January 19th. She explained how Sherry's family allowed her to live with them, When she moved from Spokane, Washington to Salem to find a job, again, she said she and Sherry worked for Sherry's dad, his janitorial service company, and that Transamerica was their Sunday job. She said it normally didn't take them very long to clean the building. They got there around 9:15 p.m. We're done in about 20 minutes. But Lisa saw a dirty window when they were ready to leave and then went to the back room to get a spray bottle. Sherry emptied the garage alone without telling her. When she returned to where Sherry was, she saw a man pointing a gun at them. The killer now forced them to go to the lunchroom, the only place in the building that couldn't be seen from the parking lot or the road because of all the windows. There, he told them to take off all their clothes and get down on the ground. Once they were nude, he demanded that the girls perform oral sex on each other, ordering them to also fondle one another. He then attempted to rape Lisa vaginally, but couldn't get it up. Lisa tried to placate the man in hopes they would survive, but Sherry kept crying uncontrollably, which made the man angry. He now forced both of them to perform oral sex on him, and then when he was done, he told them to lie face down on the floor and asked if they had any rope. They pleaded with him to not hurt them. They promised they wouldn't tell anyone. He was quiet for a moment, and then he started firing, alternating shots between the two of them. Lisa lay as still as she could and pretended to be dead, but Sherry moaned. Lisa got up 5 minutes later, went to the restroom to look at her face before calling the police. It's fucking incredible she survived. Days later, Lisa learned that she contracted herpes from the killer. That's fun. What a horrible reminder, right, of her assault for the rest of her life. Every time she has an outbreak, she's reminded of being raped and shot in the head, of being forced to have sex with her best friend right before her best friend is murdered. Detective Dave Comnick sent out bulletins with a composite sketch of the killer. He received a bunch of calls from other departments with unsolved assault cases, but none of these calls would point him towards Randy Woodfield. February 3rd, 1981. Lisa agrees to be hypnotized in front of a police artist, sketch artist, to help create a more precise image of the killer. Detective Dave Comnick and his partner Monty Holloway follow up on hundreds of tips. They obtain a list of parolees from the past 2 years who had served time for rape, sex offenses, or murder, tracking each and every one of them down. None of them resembled this new sketch of the killer. Unfortunately for the investigation, Randy Woodfield had technically never served time for a sex crime. Remember when he pled guilty to assaulting and robbing that undercover cop, his oral sodomy charges were dropped. Comnick and Holloway now concluded falsely that the killer was not a local. They sent out a teletype to 7 other states asking for reports of similar crimes. February 4th, they receive a call from Shasta County, California. There had been a brutal double murder the day before, and the weapon was believed to be .32 caliber, right? Just like in these other violent crimes. February 3rd, 1981, 2.5 weeks after the attacks on Lisa Garcia and Sherry Hull, the I5 killer had murdered 37-year-old Donna Lee Eckerd and her 14-year-old daughter, Janelle Jarvis, inside their home in Mountain Gate, California. Donna's husband, Steve Eckerd, was a firefighter in Redding, about 8 miles north. He was working a 24-hour shift, so he left Donna and his stepdaughter, Janelle, home alone that evening. Mountain Gate, Redding sit along I-5, just over 360 miles south of Salem. Less than a 6-hour drive, though. 5 hours, actually, if you don't stop, don't hit traffic, and just really haul ass. Steve had last spoke to his wife at 3:30 p.m. She had a doctor's appointment in the afternoon, wasn't feeling well. Donna's other daughter, 12-year-old Kristen Jarvis, was away from home for part of the evening. Kristen was staying late at school to watch a basketball game. She called her mom at 6 to ask to go to a friend's house. Donna sounded tired, like she'd been taking a nap, told Kristen to be home by 9. Kristen arrived home at 8:52 p.m. She would remember that time because when she made it home, she discovered a horrific crime scene in her parents' bedroom. Her mother, Donna, was laying on her back. Her nightgown had been pulled down to expose both of her breasts. Her ankles and arms bound with surgical tape, and her mouth and nose also covered by tape. 14-year-old Janelle also lying naked, her face covered in blood. Kristen immediately knew her older sister was dead. Man, what an insanely terrible day for a 12-year-old. Right? Her childhood completely ruined in just a few seconds. Whatever she was worried about in her life before, right, now no longer matters. Everything is different now. Kristen hoped her mom was still alive, but she was unresponsive. She called out for help at 9:01. Stepdad Steve Eckerd showed up with other first responders who determined that Janelle and Donna had both been shot. Janelle was shot in the neck, had numerous bullet wounds to her face and head. Steve was quickly ruled out as a suspect. He had proof he was on duty when the attacks occurred. Kristen said that when she talked to her mom, she said she had to go to Jake's Market to pick some things up. Jake's was just off I-5 at the end of the same street the Eckerds lived on. Seemed like they were preparing to go to the store when they were attacked. Donna had put a coat on over her nightgown. Janelle had a check in her jeans, dated February 3rd, signed by Donna. Donna would have driven. Janelle would have gotten out to buy whatever they needed, but they never went to the store. Steve quickly checked the house, determined that the only thing missing was his .38 Special Model 60 Smith & Wesson handgun. He was able to provide the serial number. Autopsies were completed the next day, and Janelle had been shot 7 fucking times in the head. Donna had been shot twice in the head. Bullets all came from a .32 caliber handgun. Despite these attacks occurring, as I mentioned, over 360 miles from the previous attacks, the MO similar to the Lisa Garcia and Sherry Hull case, right? 2 female victims attacked at the same time, .32 caliber bullets, and execution-style bullet wounds to the back of the head. And both crime scenes close to I-5. Also, Lisa and Sherry both sexually assaulted. And while Donna had not been assaulted, guessing she was too old for this dirtbag's tastes, it was determined that Janelle's body had been sodomized after death. Jesus. And, with Donna's breast exposed, I bet she was sexually assaulted, just didn't leave evidence of that. He then shot her 7 times in the head. My God, the younger victim, Janelle. Oof. Then anally raped her corpse. He's clearly not turned off by the sight of a lot of gore and blood. The victims died about an hour before they were found. February 6th now, a couple days later, 1981, Marion County, Oregon, District Attorney Chris Van Dyke and Detectives Cominick and Holloway fly to Medford, Oregon to meet with detectives from Shasta County, Redding, and Wairika, California, and Ashland, Medford, and Grants Pass, Oregon, all down there in southern Oregon. They all presented the facts of their cases to look for similarities. Detectives Dave Cominick and Monty Holloway had just learned about additional robbery cases in their area. For example, on 7:30 a.m., January 19th, a man with dark, curly hair, fake beard, ski gloves, robbed the Vancouver skating rink in Vancouver, Washington. Inside was a 17-year-old female cashier and 3 boys. No one was sexually assaulted in this case. January 26th, similar-looking suspect robbed the Dairy Mart in Eugene, Oregon, 8:15 p.m. Clerk said he wore multiple Band-Aids across his nose, brown or corduroy or suede jacket with a hood, sheepskin lining, matching the description from a previous robbery case. Again, no sexual assault. There was a robbery of a Winchell's donut store in Grants Pass, Oregon, January 29th, and a grocery store robbery in Medford, Oregon, the same day, followed by a motel robbery in Ashland, Oregon, February 4th. Lots of robberies. During the donut shop robbery, suspect stole $70 and did fondle the clerk. Also fondled a teenage female customer. Hour later, a suspect with athletic tape on his nose robbed the Richards Market in Medford, just 35 miles south on I-5. And a suspect with athletic tape, again over his nose, wanted for questioning in a rape, kidnapping, and sodomy case. Sodomy is an oral sex this time in Redding, February 3rd, 1981, same day that Donna Eckert and Janelle Jarvis were murdered. Dude's fucking busy. The 2 crime scenes about 10 miles apart. This dude just constantly robbing and assaulting, just clearly loves the rush he gets from all of this, lives for it. A woman and teenager were attacked at a Redding's Burger Express restaurant. 46-year-old Marie Sloan, the owner, was in the kitchen. 18-year-old Leah Morris was in the front when a man with dark, wavy hair walked in. He was tall, wearing a wool cap, windbreaker jeans, jogging shoes, and gloves. When Leah looked up to take his order, she saw that he was pointing a gun at her. The man ordered Marie to sit down, and Marie told Leah to get the money out of the register. She complied and handed it over to him. The man then led both women to the bathroom. Marie was forced to kneel on top of the toilet. The man taped her hands and ankles together, taped her mouth shut, then ordered Leah to take her clothes off and fondle Marie's breasts. And then he forced Leah to give him a blowjob. And while this is happening, this is fucking crazy, Marie's husband stopped by the shop to check on his wife, even pushed against the bathroom door when she was trapped inside. Marie and Leah, afraid for their lives, did not make a peep. The man assaulting them simply said, "It's busy." Then a moment later, he opened the door, forced Marie's husband into the bathroom at gunpoint as well. Then, never firing a shot, leaves the victims in the bathroom, and they hear him run away from the restaurant he had stolen $230. Following day, February 4th, 1981, 21-year-old Jessie Clovis gets into her car to drive home after buying cigarettes from a store in Wairika, 99 miles north of Redding. So heading back up towards Eugene, 280 miles further north, where Randy's now living. And on the 4th, in Wairika, a man, clearly Randy, opened Jessie's door and told her to move over. Said he had a gun, instructed her to not look at his face, but she managed to steal a few glances. She guessed he was in his mid-20s, wearing a green jacket, jeans, and running shoes. He had on gloves, a cap, athletic tape on the bridge of his nose. He told her to give him the money from her purse, then to lie down with her head in his lap. And then, so weird, he asked Jessie for permission to touch her breasts. After telling her he had a gun, after he was already doing it. The fuck? Does he think that kind of permission counts? I'm pretty sure when you kidnap someone and let them know you have a gun and will use it, they're not consenting to anything you ask of them. Randy also wanted her to tell him how much she was enjoying being fondled. And then, as she goes along, With all of this out of fear for her life, he forces her, of course, to give him a blowjob. Does this after she says no when he asks her if she has ever given a blowjob before. The man drives farther and farther away from town as Jesse continues to perform oral sex. Randy is saying shit to her like, you ever seen a dick this big? That kind of stuff. After choking her with his dick to the point she almost threw up and saying all kinds of nasty shit to her, he ejaculates into her mouth. When he finally stops the car, he forces Jesse to remove her clothes. Then he rapes her vaginally, right? The rare vaginal rape for this guy. During the rape, asks her if she wants him to ejaculate inside her, like inside her vagina, or inside her mouth. She chooses her vagina. So now he forces her to allow him back into her mouth, knowing that is what she hates the most. Afterwards, he tapes her wrists together, uses a rag to wipe his fingerprints off of her seat. He tells her not to go to the police, adding, if you do, I'll just say that you picked me up hitchhiking and you asked for it. They'll believe me. That would be an embarrassment for you. This guy's such a motherfucker. Then also, so fucking random, drives her back to Wairika to where he had kidnapped her. Along the way, she asked him, why did you do this to me? And then he seemed to give an honest answer. He said, quote, because all women are alike. They only give you pussy when they want it. My girlfriend was a waitress and fooled around behind my back. She attracted a lot of men, and that made me jealous. I'm a very jealous guy. These guys are always so fucked in the head, the way they think about their crimes. Yeah, dummy, of course women only have sex with you when they want to. Right, that's how it's supposed to work. It's their body. I wish there was an entry in the timeline of Randy in court as a defendant at the trial of some guy who had raped him a bunch of prison. And that guy testifies, guys like Randy, they're all the same. They think they should only, have to let you fuck their butt if they want that or like it. Nope. If I want to stick my dick in your butt, that's what's happening. Then he just stands up and shouts some He-Man shit.
By the power of Grayskull.
I have the power to fuck your butt in a prison cell when I want Randy. Jesse's rapist then dropped her off in front of the store and walked away, disappearing near a Sambo's restaurant by I-5. Back to the gathering of detectives discussing Randy's crimes. I guess that wasn't so weird he did. He probably went back and got his car. I don't know why I thought that was weird for him to drive her back. Back to the gathering of detectives discussing Randy's crimes. The day after the meeting, the lab confirms that the bullets found in the bodies of Donna Eckerd and Janelle Jarvis match the bullets removed from Sherry Hull and Lisa Garcia's bodies exactly. Right from that crime scene. All four people shot by the same assailant. Also, the surgical tape used to bind the victims in Grants Pass, Medford, Redding, Wairika, Shasta County, all came from the same roll of athletic tape. So what else was Randy up to around the time of these crimes? Probably whipping his dick out, flashing a couple dozen women a day. But also, shortly before the most vicious of Randy's recent crimes, on January 30th, 1981, Cynthia and Randy meet in San Francisco for what they called a little love boat weekend. That's fun. Two had a great time. Did some touristy things, visiting Alcatraz. Cynthia thought it was a little strange that Randy still didn't want to have normal sex, only oral sex, but she assumed he was just waiting for that until marriage. Nope, he just really loves blowjobs. Probably, I'm speculating, but probably because he knows that while his genitals are being pleasured, the woman's genitals are not, right? Best of both worlds for a guy like Randy. He gets to come, and the woman making him come does not. On the 31st, Randy confessed that he had been in prison before, was on parole, since he was shocked, but accepted it was his past, and it would never happen again. Following that confession, Randy proposed, and she said yes. Oh, great. They didn't set an official date, but discussed getting married in late summer or around Christmas time. Randy took Cynthia to the airport, told her he was going to have to drive north to Eugene on I-5, said he had plans to visit his sister and Susan in Mount Shasta, tell her about the engagement. Mount Shasta is about 65 miles from Mountain Gate, where the double homicide occurred February 3rd. Cynthia was back in Albuquerque by the evening of February 2nd. Randy called her around midnight, told her they would talk again soon. Cynthia was worried when Randy still hadn't contacted her by February 4th, though. After repeat calls, she finally heard back from him on the 5th. Didn't really question him about why it took 2 days to get home, assuming he had been visiting his sister that whole time. Randy didn't bother telling her he had been busy raping and killing women and kids. Probably slipped his mind. Cynthia's grades now started to suffer because all she could think about was Randy. She had no idea that while he was sending her letters and gifts, he was also doing the same shit with about a dozen other women. Cynthia quickly decided she simply could not live without Randy. She withdraws from school, right, drops out, then in early March, leaves New Mexico to meet him in Oregon. Oh boy. We'll check back in with her later. February 9th, 1981, the I5 Bandit robbed stores in Corvallis and Albany, two cities just 11 miles apart in Oregon. At 8 p.m., the suspect robbed a fabric store in Corvallis, stole $300, forced a 30-year-old female clerk and a female customer into a back room where he bound them with tape and sexually assaulted both of them. That same night, a similar-looking suspect bound and sodomized 2 women at an Albany laundromat. Fuck! Just coming left and right. Robbing and raping willy-nilly. By this point, Randy had started his new life in the Eugene area. He was living in Springfield, Oregon, which borders Eugene. He'd moved into that spare room he was renting from Susan Matz. We met her earlier when him and Cynthia went over there to visit her for Randy to give Susan the first rent check. She's a 29-year-old divorced mother. She has a 6-year-old son named Mickey. Susan was renting a 3-bedroom house for $350 a month, but had trouble making the payments. She thought Randy was laid back, wouldn't be any trouble. He reassured her that even though he was currently out of a job and receiving unemployment checks, he would still be able to always pay his rent on time. Mickey and Randy would play football with the other neighborhood kids. He would show off his Green Bay Packer sticker that he kept on his car. Hopefully, didn't also show the kids his dick. Susan didn't see Randy much because he took many overnight trips. He requested that if anyone came looking for him, just tell them he was out applying for jobs. Susan noticed that even though he didn't work, he sure liked to spend money. He bought gifts for his girlfriends, used cocaine, went out drinking often. Also jacked up the phone bill with long distance calls, a lot of them. He's calling so many women to make sure that they know that he's thinking about them, right? But he would always pay his share of the phone bill. Susan, though, again, wonders, where's he getting all this money? Susan also noticed that now 30-year-old Randy, very interested in teenage girls. She tried to stay out of it until she saw him hitting on her 16-year-old babysitter. After she found them in fucking bed together, she wanted to take the girl home, but Randy said no, she doesn't want to go home. Just close the door. Susan found the babysitter and Randy naked in bed together 3 to 4 times when she was supposed to be babysitting. My God, what a roommate. She tried to convince Randy to leave the girl alone, but he didn't seem to care, what she had to say about it. Finally, she said that Randy only brought women home twice, not counting the babysitter who's fucking, during the time they lived together. Not many women, but, they didn't live together very long, just a few weeks. Valentine's Day 1981 would be one of Randy's last weekends as a free man, thank God. He rented a room at a Marriott hotel in Portland, wanted to throw a party on Valentine's Day, which was Saturday that year. And he did throw a party, kind of. No one showed up for it. Literally no one. He has a lot of women he's, constantly trying to fuck, but no friends, really. Randy's angry and embarrassed. Who's he supposed to flash now? Strangers? That's getting old. To make himself feel better, he makes an 8-mile drive in his gold Volkswagen Bug to Beaverton, Oregon, to visit his former girlfriend, Julie Wrights. We met her a long time ago in the timeline. He met her when he was working at the Fawcett Tavern in 1980, when she was 17. It would not be a pleasant reunion, at least not for Julie. February 15th, 1981, the body of now 18-year-old Julie Ann Wrights found inside her home. She had been living with her mom and a female roommate in a duplex in Beaverton. She had plans to go out to several Valentine's Day parties, but she didn't have a date. Julie's mom and roommate had gone out and were away until early Sunday morning. When Julie's mom came home, she found Julie's nude body on the stairs. At first, she thought that Julie just drank too much and passed out. But when she got close, she saw her hair was stained with blood. Now she thought Julie probably hit her head on the post and fell unconscious. She calls 911. Yeah, she was not unconscious. She was already dead. EMTs could tell that Julie had been shot a near-contact wound to the head. Captain Dave Bishop and Detective Neil Loper were the leads on this case. They believed that Julie was running down the stairs to get to the front door to escape somebody who was probably chasing her when she was shot. Her mom and roommate were insistent that they always kept the door locked, and Julie would not have let a stranger in, which meant it was almost certain that she knew her killer. The suspect pool was large because Julie was a beautiful girl, went on a lot of dates. Her friends said she went to several parties, was last seen around 2 a.m. There were no arguments or altercations that anyone could recall from that evening. Julie indicated she was going home when she left the last party. The police learned that Julie had been talking to an older man in his 40s, but she wasn't really interested in him. Perhaps he didn't take the rejection well, but then he was located that evening and had a solid alibi. Police also found a young man who hung out with Julie at a party. He said he saw her at 10 p.m., did not take her home. He passed a polygraph along with 3 other teen boys who had interactions with her that evening. A .38 caliber bullet was found deep inside Julie's brain and type B semen found inside her body. Same type of semen found on her sheets. She'd been raped just before she'd been murdered. Within a week, detectives questioned over 100 people, gave 36 people polygraphs. Everyone was cleared. Meanwhile, Detective Dave Komanek decided he had to hold another law enforcement meeting. There were more I5 Bandit cases. On February 12th, the suspect robbed the Sassy Dress Shop in Vancouver, Washington at 5:45 p.m., bound the elderly clerk with athletic tape. Hour and a half later, he was in Olympia, Washington, about 100 miles north on I-5, forced 2 teens into a freezer of a drive-in, sexually assaulted both of them, then robbed the register. Locked the victims inside with very little air, and they were lucky to be found alive. 10 p.m., he robbed a Dairy Queen in Bellevue, about 64 miles away. Locked the male employee in the freezer, did not lock the female employee inside. The composite sketches from all 3 locations almost identical and matched previous composites. Marion County DA Chris Van Dyke now held a news conference to warn women in Oregon. He stressed that the police feared the killer would strike in the Salem area in the next few days. Authorities this time did not think Julie's murder was connected because she was killed in her home by someone she knew, while the I5 Bandit / killer seemed to choose victims at random, and Beaverton not directly along I5. A few days later, the I5 Bandit / killer strikes yet again. February 18th, a customer entered a 7-Eleven in Eugene, 3:25 in the morning. He waited for the clerk, but no one ever came to the counter. Then he heard a muffled sound from the back, found a female clerk on her stomach, hands and feet bound with athletic tape and tape across her mouth. Detective found tape in the storeroom and in the street, as well as a Band-Aid box and a Band-Aid. The suspect was captured on camera, but the image is too blurry, and he wore a hood to obscure his features. 3 days later, the suspect robs a fucking Taco Time in Eugene after 9 p.m. I do love me some Taco Time. Hard-shelled tacos with questionable meat, cheddar cheese, and tater tots called Maxi Fries? Si, por favor. 2 teen girls were in this Taco Time's kitchen when a tall man in a khaki jacket and a cap walked into the restaurant. 17-year-old Connie Soldano ran straight towards the back door as the man shouted for her to stop. Good for her. She saw that he had a pistol and she just fucking kept on running. She escaped to a nearby Dairy Queen and called the police. Love it. Smart kid. Her friend Terry Brady left behind. The man ordered her to squat down on the floor. She did, and then the man ran out. Moments later, the police surrounded the building. The suspect was already gone. She must have heard the sirens. All that was left behind was a piece of surgical tape. A week later, February 25th, the suspect appears at a restaurant in Corvallis. 5:52 p.m., 2 teen girls were working. 18-year-old Jill Martin walked outside to the back of the building to use the bathroom. Before she could shut the door, dude forces his way in, forces her to perform oral sex on him. He then binds her hands and feet, more fucking tape, leaves her in the bathroom. Some semen left on the bathroom floor, type B. Meanwhile, in Beaverton, Captain Dave Bishop and Detective Neil Loper still trying to solve the murder of Julie Wrights. They suspected that Julie's killer was someone from her past, maybe somebody her friends had forgotten about, or someone she had met possibly very recently. Detective Loper questioned one of Julie's close friends again, and now he mentions the name of Randy Woodfield, who met Julie at the Fawcett Tavern. He said the two dated a bit, but that Randy came on way too strong, and Julie did not want to see him again. And he mentioned that Randy drove a gold Volkswagen Bug. Another friend recalled the time when Randy crawled into bed with her and Julie in Julie's bed after he had taken Julie out drinking one night. And then Randy's name was mentioned a third time, February 27th. Someone said they saw him around Beaverton on Valentine's Day weekend. Julie's roommate said that if Julie saw Randy outside her door, she probably would have let him in. Detective Loper now talks to Randy's former coworkers at the Fawcett, learns dude is fucking obsessed with young girls, and has a real temper when it comes to women. Becomes angry if they reject him. Things are finally not looking good for fucking Randy Woodfield. February 28th now, Detective Neil Loper talks to Randy's parole officer, Judy Pulliam, who detailed his criminal record. Loper learned that Randy actually had been convicted of sex crimes multiple times, that he loved to flash his dick at people, that he groped an undercover police officer, and that he very likely committed numerous sexual assaults. Pulliam also informs Loper that Randy was a suspect in at least 3 homicides in Portland. And she gave him the information for Tony Meyer, Randy's recently assigned parole officer in Eugene. A Portland detective then confirmed that Randy was a suspect in the Sherry Ayers case, but had been eliminated because his blood type was B negative. Right, this piece of information was critical because it potentially now linked him to the Julie Wrights case, as the semen found in her body was B negative. Hotel records confirmed that Randy stayed at the Marriott Hotel in Portland, February 14th, not far from Julie's home. Beaverton police thought that they could get a chance to talk to Randy March 3rd during his next scheduled meeting with his parole officer, Tony Meyer. Another joint meeting amongst the I5 investigators, kind of a loose task force, takes place March 3rd in Eugene. At the meeting, a technician from the Oregon State Crime Lab announces they were looking for a suspect with type B blood. Then, Randy misses his parole meeting. Bishop and Loper now contact Detective Doug Ashbridge in Springfield, where Randy is renting a room. Ashbridge drives by Randy's house, reports that Randy's gold Bug is parked in the garage and that the curtains are drawn. Loper, Ashbridge, and 2 parole officers decide to pay him a visit now. After a long period of knocking, Randy finally opens the door, kind of. He just cracks the door open just a little tiny bit and then just pokes his hard dick outside, the dick covered by a sock, and talks as if he's some kind of ventriloquist who works with a sort of cock sock puppet instead of a normal sock puppet. And the officers just hear like, "Hi, officers, what can I do for you?"
I hope you're not looking for Randy, because Randy's not home. He's like, he's volunteering with sick orphans or some shit. He's a really nice guy.
No, of course, Randy opened the door like a normal person. He claimed he thought his parole appointment was at a later time. Detective Loper now explains to Randy that he was investigating the murder of Julie Wrights, and that they were talking to everyone who knew her. Randy said he did not know anyone named Julie Wrights, but agreed to come to the station to talk anyway. That's a fucking dumb move, Randy. They already know that you know her, and now you look more guilty. At the station, Randy doubles down on his lie. He claims, again, doesn't know Julie, but when he's shown a photo, he suddenly was like, oh yeah, I recognize her. Now he claims they just went out once, that he met her at his old job at the Fawcett Tavern. Randy admits he went to her home once when she had a party with her roommate, but said they had never had sex, and that, he did not see her over Valentine's Day weekend. He claimed that he was at his sister's home in Portland, went out partying on the night of the 14th, and then he got back to his sister's place around 4 a.m. Said that while he was out, he met a friend of his at the Marriott for some drinks, then hit up some other spots in the Portland area, met a girl named Jeannie that he went to some bars with, said he didn't know where Jeannie lived or what her phone number was. Randy was asked for samples of his head and pubic hair and blood. He initially agrees to this and to a polygraph, then changes his mind and considers calling an attorney. When the detectives offer to make the call for him, changes his mind again. He's fucking panicking. After some more talk, Randy now decides not to cooperate, saying, it's just against my principles to do that. Becomes clear to everybody that Randy is getting real nervous. He again says he'll submit to a polygraph, changes his mind quickly again. At one point, when Randy's alone with Captain Bishop, he just blurts out, just because I had sex with her, I wouldn't have killed her. Bishop lets that slip up go, right? Randy had made a point earlier of saying he had never slept with Julie Wrights. Now he takes this mental note of what other mistakes is he going to make? Randy eventually agrees to a search of his room, saying he has nothing to hide, which ends the interrogation at the station, and they all head back to where Randy's living. The following items are collected during this initial search of Randy's room and his vehicle: a set of sheets that contain head and pubic hairs, mattress pad with dried blood on it, another set of sheets, wallet with a ID and a receipt for the purchase of a .22 caliber handgun, a bong, a whole fucking box of athletic tape, paper bag containing a .38 caliber or .357 caliber cleaning kit, cocaine snorter, and a box of firecrackers. Sure, why not? Randy explained that he thought he might have gotten the gun cleaning kit before he went to prison. He just still happened to have it, because he's not supposed to have a gun because he's a felon. Also seemed real nervous when the detectives showed interest in the box of athletic tape. Started asking the detectives, why would you want to take that? Detective Loper, Captain Bishop were obviously aware that the I5 killer, and Bandit, they knew about the tape being used to bind victims, to mask the facial features by putting it over the bridge of the nose, and they want this tape sent to a lab for comparison. The detectives now say goodbye for now to Randy, set up a stakeout, speak to his roommate, Susan Motz, when she comes home from work. And she doesn't seem surprised at all to see the detectives. Says she has been suspicious of Randy. He never has a job, but he always has money. Also, she doesn't like how sometimes he'll put a fucking sock on his hard dick and force unwanted puppet shows on her.
Hey, Susan, it's me. It's Cocky, sock puppet. If you pull my sock off, I'll give you a kiss on the lips.
Sorry, I do find the concept of using your dick to work as a sock puppet very amusing. Captain Bishop asked Susan about long-distance calls, and she agreed to show him the phone bill. Bishop didn't see calls to Beaverton, but did see a charge from Mount Shasta, February 3rd, 1981, same day the I-5 killer struck in California. Susan now says, it's him, isn't it? Randy's the I-5 killer, isn't he? I've been afraid of that, but I didn't want to say it out loud. Well, this is big, but it's still too soon to arrest Randy. They want more evidence. The officers do strongly warn Susan to take her son and get the fuck out of the house. Yeah, I bet. Loper and Bishop now speak to a detective with the Shasta County Sheriff's Office, ask him to check the reverse directory, see where Randy Woodfield was when he made the phone call. The detective sees that the call was made after 9 p.m. at Jerry's Restaurant in Mount Shasta, just a little over 50 miles north of the crime scene on I-5. The victims were killed between 6 and 9 p.m., so this would fit in that window, obviously. Bishop and Loper contacted Marion County fit in the sense that he could have killed them and then gone and made this call. Bishop and Loper contacted Marion County to speak to Detectives Dave Kominick and Monty Holloway about the suspect. They drove to Springfield to question Susan Motz a little bit more about the days that Randy was away from home. Those dates, unsurprisingly, line up perfectly with a bunch of suspected I-5 bandit / killer crimes. And Randy's calls line up with robbery sprees in early 1981. Cassia Bishop, Cashup? The fuck am I talking about? Cassia Bishop. Start talking in a very weird, mushy voice. Cassia Bishop later told you Goria. All of a sudden it came over us. Captain Bishop later told the Oregonian, All of a sudden, it became obvious. It was a map of I5. Woodfield was addicted to the phone. He made thousands of calls. It's fucking crazy. He had girlfriends everywhere. The detectives also looked at Randy's mugshot and agreed he looked like the composite sketches. Cominick realized Randy hadn't shown up in their previous search of parole records because they were looking for killers and sex offenders, but Randy's oral sodomy charges again had been dropped. Now he's looking like a real promising suspect. It's got to be this guy. Randy has B-negative blood, looks like the composite sketches, clearly has a preference for blowjobs, drives the Volkswagen Bug, keeps a shit ton of adhesive tape in his room, right, athletic tape, whatever. Lab employees work through the night to analyze the blood and pubic hair samples from Randy's house. They want to compare the hair to the sample from the Corvallis case, where the two young sisters were sexually assaulted, and also compare it to the Sherry Hull Lisa Garcia case. By this point, reporters have caught on that something's going down in Eugene with the I5 killer, and they're demanding information. Randy this time still has no idea the police think he's the I5 killer. He thinks he's only been suspected in connection to Julie's murder case. March 4th now, the Eugene Register Guard releases an article titled, Police Hint of Break and Bandit Case. By that afternoon, the press announced that the police are questioning a man named Randy, and now some reporters camp outside of Susan Matz's home with Randy inside. Randy now calls his fiancée, Cynthia Edgman, asks her to come to Oregon. What the fuck? Fails to mention that he is the main suspect in the I5 investigation. I probably forgot. Honest mistake. Cynthia packs her things, rents a trailer, and drives to Oregon to start a new life with Randy. She has no idea what she's getting into. Next day, on the afternoon of March 5th, Dave Cominick and Ron Griesel from the Eugene Police Department enter Randy's home for another conversation. Yes, he answers the door again with Cocky the Cocksock puppet in my mind. Randy again asks the detectives why the police took his athletic tape. Cominick said he can't comment on their motives. Randy says he knows he is going to get in trouble for a parole violation as he moved without permission. He also mentioned that a neighbor's kid came over and said the police thought he was the I5 bandit. Officers don't confirm or deny this. Randy agrees to give the officers a tour of the house. As they look around, he starts talking about how he wants to go to school, go back, get a good job. He has hopes of managing an athletic club someday, chats about his favorite topic, flashes dick, professional sports. He's so likable, seems so normal. Cominick actually starts to have doubts about this guy being the killer, right? He's such a pleasant dude. When asked, Randy freely admits that he has gotten in trouble in the past for exposing himself. But he said, I'll never do that kind of stuff again. I don't have a problem anymore. I wonder how hard it was for him in that moment. Now he'd be like, psych, and then just fucking whip his dick out. Ha! I got you. You let your guard down. Cominick was horrified when he saw that someone had recently used the fireplace in Randy's room. He had a bad feeling Randy was burning evidence, even though Randy said it was probably Susan Matz's son who did it. Then when asked for a hair sample, Randy starts to seem like the suspect they're after again. He refuses to give a sample, refuses to submit to a polygraph, and is reluctant to account for his whereabouts on certain dates. At this point, he has read his rights and he's arrested for parole violation, and he will never walk free again. Very anticlimactic arrest, considering the intense investigation that's led up to it. At the station, Randy is interviewed by Cominick and Griesel while Bishop Loper, and a detective from the Benton County Sheriff's Office in Corvallis all listen. Early in the interview, Randy admits that he has herpes, another nod towards him being the killer. The detectives shared that they knew that Randy had made calls in Independence and Woodburn, Oregon, the night Sherry Hull, Lisa Garcia were shot. He was asked if he was in Salem, near the crime scene, the night of January 18th, 1981. Randy nodded when asked if he drove through Salem towards Portland the night in question. This is big. The detectives tell Randy this means that he had to have driven within a few hundred feet from where the victims were shot around the time that they were shot. Randy didn't say shit when they told him this. The detectives now shift to casual questions to get him relaxed, then hit him again with another critical question. Cominick asked Randy why the Beaverton police thought he was a suspect in their murder case. And Randy says, they were talking about Julie Wrights, and I knew her. She played up to me. Randy then discussed how 3 women he knew were killed: Sherry Ayers, Darcy Fix, and Julie Wrights. Randy said he was willing to prove in court that he was not in the places where the crimes were committed when they were committed. Cominick agreed that he might have to go to court because Randy's landlady said he was away the entire night during the incidents in Corvallis. And Cominick now told him directly, for the first time, we think you are the I5 bandit. And Randy says, I'm not pleading guilty to that one. I'm not the I5 killer. I'm not going to defend myself because I don't have to. Randy tried to explain where he was in late January and early February, then said, look, I can't be expected to remember exact dates or times or locations. The past is history. I would like to help you more, but I can't do that at this time. And then the interview ended when Randy gave the name and phone number of his attorney. However, when the police then call that number, Randy's dick, Cocky, answers the phone.
Hi, this is Cocky Steele. This is Randy's attorney.
And then the officers are like, fuck, Randy, we can fucking see you, dude. That's impressive that you're able to smuggle a landline into the station for your little gag. We can see you rubbing your dick up against the receiver. And your lips move when Cocky talks.
No, they don't. Okay, gotta go now. Bye.
Sorry if this running bit is annoying. The absurdity of it just cracks me up so much. Meanwhile, Detective Monty Holloway met with Lisa Garcia, the woman Randy sexually assaulted and shot the night he also assaulted, and shot and killed her best friend Sherry Hull, to show her a photo lineup, and Lisa tentatively identifies Randy, but is not 100% sure. She agrees to come to Eugene to do an in-person lineup in a few days. On March 5th, the victims in Bothell, Washington, who encountered the I5 Bandit, December 21st, 1980, now positively identify Randall Wood. Bothell police obtained their own arrest warrant against Randy. Search warrant signed March 5th for the house in Springfield. Investigators spend 4 more days thoroughly combing through the home. They find items of clothing described by some of the victims. They find a pubic hair that turned out to be microscopically indistinguishable from a pubic hair found in the Transamerica building, January 18th, 1981. A single .32 caliber bullet is found in Randy's bedroom. It's a rare Remington Peters .32 Colt long bullet, and it matches the bullets used in the shootings of Lisa Garcia, Sherry Hull, Janelle Jarvis, and Donna Eckert exactly. Other investigators are working on the phone records and confirm that Randy was near the crime scenes at the relevant times and locations. They're locking this shit up. Detectives learned that Randy called an 18-year-old girl at her home in Salem, February 15th. She confirmed that Randy planned to be in Portland on Valentine's Day, wanted her to visit him at his hotel, but she didn't go. This was further verification that Randy was near Beaverton on Valentine's Day, implicating him further in the Julie Wrights murder case. Randy's fiancée, Cynthia Edgman, shows up at Randy's house. March 16th, 1981. But he's not home. That's fucking crazy. Poor Cynthia. After making a bunch of calls, she learns he's been arrested, and she calls the police department and agrees to an interview. God, I bet she was pissed. I felt like an idiot. She dropped out of college for this pile of shit. She talked about their trip to San Francisco, how after they departed, she could not reach him until February 5th. Randy's dad, Jack, now comes to see him in the Springfield jail. Randy tells his dad he was out with the girl the night she was killed. The police are just questioning about it, that's all. Said he went to a Valentine's Day party and saw her afterwards, but that's it. Randy fucked up when he said that, badly. Before that, he had denied being with Julie Wrights on Valentine's night. And now detectives, and no detectives had ever told him that Julie went to a party the night she was killed. Then when one of Randy's many girlfriends in Eugene calls the police to report that Randy asked if she would lie and be his alibi for Valentine's Day weekend. He's fucking done. He and Cocky are both going down. March 8th, 1981. Over 24 I5 Bandit victims come to Springfield, Oregon to participate in an in-person lineup. Randy lines up with 5 officers in disguise. They all have their cocks out. The men are asked to turn left and then right and repeat various phrases. Randy's number 5. Each victim is asked to mark a numbered card to identify the suspect. The majority of the victims picked number 5. However, their certainty did vary. That damn fake beard and athletic tape. Little Mary Sue Green and her sister Megan, right, just 10 and 8 when they were attacked, both attend this lineup. Megan couldn't recognize the man who attacked her, but Mary Sue, fucking bingo. That guy, number 5. Lisa Garcia, right, that other key witness, also, yep, number 5, for sure, 100%. March 9th, 1981, Marion County, Oregon, charges Randy with murder, attempted murder, and 2 counts of oral sodomy in the Sherry Hull / Lisa Garcia case. Randy said when he is rearrested, I knew it. I knew last night that you guys were charging me. Then as he was booked into the Marion County Jail, he said, my only regret is that I didn't have a chance to shave or put on clean clothes before I had to face the news cameras. So that's cool. Detectives were still looking to speak to 22-year-old Christy Ree, a friend of Randy's who can help him with his case. There's rumors that Christy accompanied Randy during some of the robberies and helped him buy a gun. Christy admits she did agree to buy a gun for Randy, but claims she changed her mind, never picked it up. Next day, March 10th, Beaverton detective Neil Loper confirms Christy Ree purchased .32 caliber ammo from a store in Milwaukee, Oregon on December 19th, but she continued to deny it. That's December 19th, 1980. She had also purchased a .22 caliber weapon October 10th, 1980, but returned the gun December 10th. When confronted about all this, Christy admits that Randy told her about robbing a Baskin-Robbins in Washington. She also said he had talked about using a beard and a Band-Aid over his nose to disguise his appearance. She insisted she wasn't with him in Washington during the robberies. Christy said that Randy had talked about a silver gun before, and she eventually admitted that Randy went with her to purchase the gun, but she returned it in December. She later admitted that Randy had another gun she thought that he had obtained through a private party. Christy claimed that she and Randy went shopping, had lunch on Valentine's Day. He left her home 6 p.m. She couldn't go to his party because she was sick. He called her repeatedly until midnight, then stopped calling until he started again 9 a.m. February 15th. This guy fucking loves to constantly call people. Randy called her again in early March, told her that he needed her help because he was a suspect in a murder case, but she refused to help him. Despite supplying investigators with this information, Christy was arrested for hindering prosecution because detectives thought she was still being evasive. Now she suddenly remembers she did see Randy with a silver .32 caliber gun, that he had it in his car after she bought bullets for him. She also admitted she saw Randy cleaning this particular gun before Christmas in 1980. Christy is now given full immunity because the prosecution needs her testimony. And Christy agrees to take a polygraph about her testimony March 11th. She was deemed as being deceptive in negative responses to the following questions. Did Randy tell her about killing anyone? Was she with Randy when he committed robberies or murders? Did Randy tell her when he threw his gun or where he threw his gun? Was she with him when he threw it out? Did she know the location where the gun was thrown out? Did she know where Randy bought his silver gun? Had she ever been in Washington with Randy? Did Randy give her money from a robbery? Was she ever with Randy when he committed murders? She also was judged to be deceptive when she said she purchased ammo for him just once, and not more than once. As mentioned, the silver .32 caliber gun was never found, but investigators had the bullets from 3 cases and the bullets from Randy's home. They all matched. Julie Wright was killed by a .38 weapon, most likely a Model 60 Smith & Wesson revolver. Firefighter Steve Eckert submitted bullets he used for the weapon that was stolen from his home February 3rd, 1981, and they matched bullets retrieved from Julie Wright's body. So he used his gun in her murder. Steve Eckert's gun, later found by a boy playing near the banks of the Mackenzie River, just a few blocks from where Randy was living. A little bit suspicious. Authorities able to do ballistics testing confirmed the match to the Julie Wright's case, and they fucking got him. At least for one murder, they got him. Randy's indicted in Marion County, Oregon, March 16th, 1981. Week later, March 24th, Randy pleads not guilty to 2 counts of sodomy, 2 counts of attempted kidnapping, and 1 count of being an ex-convict in possession of a firearm in Lynn County. These charges all stem from his crimes in Albany. He was charged with 1 count of robbery in the Baskin-Robbins robbery in Bothell, Washington, then charged with sexual abuse for his actions at the Dairy Queen in Bellevue, Washington. On April 1st, Randy pled not guilty to 7 felonies in Benton County, Oregon for his crimes in Corvallis, 3 counts of sodomy, 1 count of burglary, robbery, sexual abuse, and kidnapping. Murder charges not yet filed for the murders of Julie Wright, Janelle Jarvis, and Donna Eckert. Murder charges were filed for the murder of Sherry Hull, and attempted murder charges filed for Lisa Garcia's attack. Randy's first trial begins June 9th, 1981. Opening statements begin June 11th. Marion County DA Chris Van Dyke, we've met him a few times, went through all the evidence against Randy, right? The victim identification, the .32 caliber bullets removed from Lisa Garcia and Sherry Hull, a rare bullet type that matched the bullet found in Randy's home, the pubic hair found on the rug at the Transamerica building, which was microscopically indistinguishable from Randy's pubic hair. Blood tests done on the semen swab in Lisa's mouth showed the attacker was a type A or type B secretor. Randy is a type B secretor. Within 2 weeks of the attack, Lisa was diagnosed with herpes. Randy has herpes. Finally, phone records placed Randy at the scene. Defense attorney Charlie Bird argued that Lisa picked the wrong person, suggested she was confused because she underwent hypnosis. Defense had another theory. There was a shooting spree in Kaiser, Oregon, May 7th, 1981, committed by Lawrence Moore. He killed 4 people, wounded 19. Perhaps he was responsible for the murder. But Bernie Pappenfuss, the deputy who responded to Lisa's call for help, identified Randy as the man he saw running about a mile from the crime scene, right? Shortly after the crimes happened. Lisa Garcia testifies June 18th, once again identifies Randy in court. Defense attacks Lisa's 5 statements, which vary slightly. Prosecution emphasizes Lisa's very first description given to the police dispatcher matched Randy Woodfield perfectly. Defense attorney Charlie Bird hoped to suggest that Lisa already had herpes and experienced a recurrence after the attack, but Lisa maintained she had never had it before being raped. Charlie Reed got on the stand, testified that Randy told her he threw a gun in a river after the shootings in Kaiser. She admitted that she purchased a box of bullets from him December 19th, and he checked to see if they would fit his silver gun. She saw him clean the same gun first week of January. Detective Dave Kominick testified Randy made phone calls from phone booths in Independence at Woodburn, 9:01, 10:31 p.m. Trips from Independence to Salem near Kaiser took 21 to 28 minutes, and the shootings occurred just outside of Salem between 9:35 and 9:50 p.m. So the times check out. Randy had an hour unaccounted for, which meant he could have definitely committed the attack. Many of Randy's former girlfriends testified, as well as his old prison buddy, Doug fucking Handy, Handy and Randy, who said that he had seen Randy wearing a hood jacket, gloves, or a hooded jacket, gloves, and a Band-Aid on his nose, and carrying a chrome pistol. Defense started their case June 23rd. Charlie Burt's main argument was that Randy was misidentified, emphasized Lisa's description matched Lawrence Moore. Paramedics had seen a person who resembled the suspect after they left the ER. Kay Carlisle, a hair expert, testified she examined the hair evidence and was not sure they were pubic hairs. She could not definitively identify who they came from. Then Cynthia Edgman testified that she and Randy had sex and she didn't contract herpes. But did they have sex? Right? Oral, but not vaginal, I thought. Did she just lie for the love of her life? Also, maybe she did have herpes, but just never had an outbreak, which is very common. On June 25th, in a very, very controversial move, Randy chooses not to take the stand in his own defense. However, his legal team does choose to put his dick on the stand, submitting it as a witness named Cocky Steele. Randy is now allowed to strip nude, place a bag over his head, a sock over his cock, and unorthodoxly testify. Luckily, I was able to find a trial transcript, okay? Online, very credible source. And here's what I found. Marion County DA Chris Van Dyke. Randy, I have a defense attorney, Charlie Burt. Objection. Misleading, Your Honor. The defendant identifies as a separate entity known as Cocky Steele and should be referred to as such. Judge Clark Brown. Sustained. Refer to Cocky as Randy again, Mr. Van Dyke, and I'll hold you in contempt of court. Marion County DA Chris Van Dyke. Apologies, Your Honor. Cocky. Where were you on the night of January 18th, 1981? When Lisa Garcia and Sherry Holt were shot, raped, and Sherry was murdered in the Transamerica building on the outskirts of Salem, Oregon, near the town of Kaiser. Cocky. I was introducing myself to two women in Portland that evening, the young redhead in the young adult fiction section of Powell's books at around 9 p.m. And then about an hour later, two teens, a blonde and a brunette, standing in line at Voodoo Donuts down on 3rd Avenue. Marion County DA Chris Van Dyke. And can these girls testify to your whereabouts? Cocky. Hell yes, they can. You should have seen the look on their faces. They clearly had never seen someone as big and beautiful as hard as Cocky. They screamed with delight. Marion County DA Chris Van Dyke. And can you share any contact information for these girls, even their names, so that we can speak to them directly? Cocky. Sure. That redhead must go by the name of Perky McSugartits. I'm guessing the blonde's name is Miss Jailbait Tight-Puss. And the brunette is either Luscious Lips or Dangerous Hips, if you know what I'm saying. Marion County DA Chris Van Dyke. Objection, Your Honor. This is absurd. Clearly, those are not real names. Judge Clark Brown. Sustained. Strike Cocky's reply from the record. Marion County DA Chris Van Dyke. Cocky. Did you sexually assault Lisa Garcia and Sherry Hull on the night of January 18th, 1981? Cocky. Yes, I did it. And I enjoyed it. And I killed Sherry and tried to kill Lisa. I did it all. Everything he accused dear Randall of was me. He had nothing to do with any of this. He couldn't lead me around. I lead him. I'm in charge of this operation. I'm the one that needs to be seen and admired. I'm the one that needs to be sucked. And I'm the one that ain't afraid to pull the trigger if I don't get what I want. At this point, Marion County DA Chris Van Dyke grabs Exhibit 6A, a .32 caliber handgun, similar to the missing murder weapon, and sets it down in front of Cocky. Marion County DA Chris Van Dyke. Cocky, would you mind demonstrating to the court, how you pull the trigger? For the next minute or so, Cocky thumps up and down against the weapon, and then Randy rips the bag off his head in dramatic fashion and starts to masturbate. Marion County DA Chris Van Dyke. Objection, Your Honor. Judge Clark Brown. Sustained. Bailiff, remove the witness from the stand. Bailiff Richard Johnson now moves to remove Cocky from the stand, but is not able to reach him before Cocky ejaculates on jurors 3, 6, and 9. Screams erupt across the court. Jury number 6 faints. Judge Clark Brown calls for recess. Court is adjourned for the day as Cocky and Randy are both led out of the courtroom in fucking handcuffs. The People's Court. Undefeated. I don't know why I said that thing at the end. I got so excited with the music. I was channeling Judge Wapner there. Something. I know it was a lot. I hope it was worth it. Whew. Randy, not Cocky, of course, testifies June 25th to discuss his whereabouts, January 18th, 1981. I fucking love that music so much. Randy first discussed his prior convictions, then explained that he was driving between Springfield and Portland the night Lisa and Sherry were attacked, a 2.5-hour trip. He stopped at a bar in Independence and had some beers. During cross-examination, he could not remember where exactly the bar was, or what it looked like inside. He admitted he stopped in North Salem on the way from Independence to Woodburn. He purchased a beer at a convenience store, made a phone call, and checked out some cars in a car lot. He claimed he had never worn Band-Aids on his nose, but did say he purchased a silver pistol in the fall of 1980. He testified that his friend bought him a box of shells, but he threw the gun out because he didn't want to go back to prison. Randy said that he once feared he had herpes and told a friend about it, but none of his girlfriends ever told him they caught it. June 26, 1981, the jury deliberates for just 3.5 hours before finding Randy guilty of attempted murder, Murder and sodomy related to the rapes and shootings of Sherry Hull and Lisa Garcia. Cocky Steele was, interestingly, found not guilty and allowed to leave the courtroom as a free dick. Cocky, free at last! Thank God Almighty, I'm free at last. Where are those girls at? JK, of course. This was not the end of Randy and Cocky's legal battle. Before sentencing, Detective Dave Comnick visited Randy to discuss the murders of Darcy Fix and Doug Altig on Thanksgiving Day 1980. Comnick suggested that Randy was angry with Darcy for dumping his buddy Tim Rossi, went to her house with a gun that belonged to Doug Handy, shot them both, then stole Darcy's small silver gun, which was then used in other crimes, and then later threw it in the river. Bingo. Randy stared at him, nodded without speaking a word. Comnick knew he could not use this nonverbal admission, but it confirmed his suspicions. Comnick now suspected Randy was involved in a lot more murders. August 28th, 1981, the Reading Municipal Court now charges Randy with 2 counts of murder, 1 count of sodomy, 2 counts of robbery, 3 counts of burglary, 1 count oral copulation, and 1 count of rape. But California will have to wait. Randy is still supposed to go on trial in Corvallis in November. He faced numerous charges there, including sodomy, sexual abuse, robbery, kidnapping, and being an ex-convict in possession of a firearm. October 12th, 1981, Randy is sentenced in Marion County to life plus 90 years, with a minimum 50-year term. Randy says in court, "I stand before you in complete innocence." The judge, the Honorable Clark Brown, tells Randy that he didn't think rehabilitation was possible in his case and added, "If the death penalty in Oregon had not been declared unconstitutional, I would have no hesitancy whatsoever to say, 'Mr. Woodfield, you are going to die.'" Fucking love this judge. Hail Clark Brown. Randy's trial in Benton County started November 2nd, 1981. The trial focused on the incident from February 25th, 1981, where an armed man sexually assaulted 18-year-old Jill Martin inside the restroom of a restaurant in Corvallis. This time, the defense has an alibi. Randy's former landlady, Susan Metz, wrote her name wrong this time, Susan Metz, changed her story. Said Randy was home in Springfield, the night of February 25th. Why, Susan? Why second guess yourself? The judge allowed the identifications made by 3 victims, Jill Martin and 2 women from the fabric shop in Corvallis. Jill testified about the attack February 25th, identified Randy in court. Detective Neil Loper from Beaverton testified about seizing a box of athletic tape and a gun cleaning kit from Randy's home. Criminalist Michael Howard told the jury that the tape from Randy's bedroom was used to bind Jill Martin's ankles and wrists. Pretty damning evidence. Forensic scientist Jim Pex from the State Crime Lab testified that semen found on Jill's clothing came from a type B secretor, a rare blood type. Randy's enzyme genotype was also rare. He was a type B secretor and had a 1-2 plus genotype, which meant only 0.27% of the world's population could have the exact same type of semen. November 5th, 1981, a Benton County judge dismissed a kidnapping charge, but Randy still faced charges of sodomy and being an ex-con in possession of a firearm. Randy was convicted, first-degree sodomy, and being an ex-con in possession of a firearm. November 6, 1981, Cocky Steele, also convicted. 1981, quite the roller coaster of a year for Randy and Cocky. December 18th, 1981, Randy and his dick are sentenced to 30 years for sodomy, 5 years for the weapons charge, to run consecutively with his other sentences. The young Green sisters would not have to face Randy in court. The Corvallis fabric store robbery case was put on hold, along with the rest of the Oregon, California, and Washington cases at this time, right? He had been put in jail long enough now for no one to have to worry about him attacking anyone again. Lisa Garcia now moves out of Oregon. Sadly, she will be sexually assaulted again by some fucking piece of shit in 1983. Her attacker, arrested and convicted, and following that bullshit, she gets married, has a baby, starts a career. She also vows that no matter how old she is, if Randy is ever granted a parole hearing, she will show up and speak about what he did to her and her best friend Sherry. All of Randy's appeals have been denied by the Oregon Court of Appeals now. Randy's minimum term means he is not eligible for a parole hearing until 2031, when he'll be 80 years old. Randy's fiancée, Cynthia, initially wrote to him in prison, but they gradually drifted apart. Obviously, he wasn't the man she thought he was. 1987, Randy tried to sue true crime author Ann Rule for disparaging him, but the suit was dismissed. That must have pissed him and Cocky off. By 1990, various new pieces of evidence and the discovery of new victims brought Woodfield's possible suspected homicide total to 44 people. He is strongly linked to 18 murders, and while he was only convicted of 1 killing, there is both DNA and ballistic evidence to almost certainly find him guilty in 6 additional murders. Since his conviction, at least as recently as 2012, you know what Randy has become mostly known for in prison? I bet you can guess. Showing his dick off. Showing female guards his dick. Seriously, he fucking loves it. Cocky Steele, still making unwanted cameos. One guard said within a few years of him beginning to serve a sentence, I can walk past Randy's cell and he's fully clothed. 5 minutes later, when I come back down the line, Randy's stripped and he's flexing his muscles, waiting for me. For years, and maybe still today, Randy was writing to many women whose information he would get from other inmates, tabloids, or how absurd is this? Various Christian magazines. He just fucking keeps being the same guy, right? Guy who loves to show ladies his dick, especially when they don't want to see it. The guy who needs to stroke his ego by romantically chatting up a bunch of women at the same time. His behavior has actually been remarkably consistent over the years. Since his final arrest in 1981, he has managed to convince several women to marry him. But then when they traveled to visit their fiancée for the first time, they learned he is not at the University of Oregon like he's been talking about. Instead, he's in prison. But he actually has gotten married to not one, not two, but 3 women while in prison. Gotten divorced twice. Still currently married to the 3rd woman. March 1st, 2006, the Oregonian reported that Randy was officially linked to the murder of Sherry Ayers by DNA evidence. Right? Sherry, the first known victim. The one where he was ruled out as a suspect because his blood type didn't match the blood type associated with some semen found in her body. His old classmate. Oregon started doing DNA testing in 1989 and 1992. Detectives submitted the semen swab from Sherry's case to the state lab. There was insufficient evidence to examine. But in 2001, the lab obtained new technology to analyze smaller amounts of DNA evidence. Randy's DNA was added to the database in December of 2000. And the lab recorded a perfect match between the DNA from Sherry's case and Randy's DNA. DNA evidence also conclusively linked him now to the rape and murder of Julie Wrights. The Ayers family has agreed that it currently doesn't make sense to prosecute him, but this homicide case will remain open in case Randy is ever actually granted a parole hearing to make sure he never leaves prison. Now let's get out of this timeline.
Good job, soldier. You made it back. Barely.
Randall Brent Woodfield. What a dick-obsessed douchebag. What a terrible example of what can, happen when you really, truly chase your dick around. When you just only think with the wrong head. Cocky Steel does seem to have been its own entity. Cocky wanted to fuck, to be sucked all the time. And Randy overly indulged his savage little friend. It's crazy that the majority of Randy's crimes that we cover took place over just 5 months between October of 1980 and March of 1981. Dude terrorized so many people up and down I-5 in Oregon, Washington, and California. No cooling off period. Once he got going, he really kept going. And why did he do it all? We'll never know because it doesn't seem as if he'll ever be honest and tell us. He's still in prison, inmate number 3705001, incarcerated at Oregon State Penitentiary in Salem, Oregon, and still not saying shit. Journalist, author, prison reform activist Jennifer Furio once asked him why he did what he did in a letter. And this is what he wrote back. You only care to know why murderers strike out in anger or rage. How should I know? What a question, Jenny. Care to write more personally? Share a photo? Talk once by phone? Your choice. Ciao, Randall Woodfield. He is still sexually obsessed with just women in general. Share a photo? Why, so you can jerk off to it? Randy is such a perfect representation of how some people are truly fucked in the head. This dude is unredeemable. You cannot rehabilitate someone like Randy, someone obsessed to this degree with deviant sexual behavior, someone who willfully refuses to come to terms with who he is. To this day, he denies having killed anyone or even raped anyone. While he is suspected of committing up to 44 homicides, he's also estimated to have committed at least an additional 60 rapes. Jim Lawrence, a detective for Portland's cold case unit, noted Woodfield's lack of remorse or responsibility in his crimes, saying, if you're talking about somebody moving towards some form of rehabilitation, they had to at some point acknowledge they are responsible for their own behaviors. That is not Randy Woodfield. Lawrence added, when he was interviewed, he'd tell detectives that he'd never rape a girl. He said he didn't have to. They wanted him. How the fuck did Randy end up this way? No one knows, right? There's never been any allegations that he himself was ever sexually assaulted growing up. It doesn't seem he was abused in any way. He grew up in a loving 2-parent household. Both his parents and both his older sisters seemed to have adored him, doted on him, cheered him on. He was good looking, smart, popular, star athlete, plenty of friends. His family had money, but also he developed a voracious, unhealthy sexual appetite combined with being extremely intolerant of any form of rejection from any women. Dude's ego grew to become a true monster. If Randy wanted to fuck you, and he wanted to fuck almost every woman, he did not take no for an answer. It seems as if, if he thought he could get away with raping you, he would rape you. If he thought he could get away with showing you his dick, he'd show you his dick. And no matter how many women he fucked, no matter how many women he exposed himself to, it was never, ever going to be enough. It couldn't be enough, right? His insecurity, too great. His sexual appetite, just truly insatiable. Randy grew to have a wildly unrealistic view of how life should work. Crazy expectations. He truly seemed to believe that if he wanted to fuck just some woman, just any woman, they should just give her body to him, let him use them how he wanted, and that if he didn't, well, they were a cruel bitch. Another cruel bitch who deserved to be raped or worse. It's a bummer. He won't come clean about, when he first started thinking about why women owed him something. When he first started to have his deviant sexual compulsions to be an exhibitionist. It would be nice to know because maybe, just maybe, if he would have been honest as a kid, if the right therapist would have intervened, all of this could have been avoided, right? And then we could learn how to help other people in the future. Or maybe he was born with some seriously bad wiring and was just doomed from the start. Time for today's takeaways.
Timesuck Top 5 Takeaways.
Number 1, Randy Woodfield began exposing himself to young women when he was in junior high. When he was first caught, the police and his football coaches allegedly swept it under the rug so he could keep playing. Very unfortunate decision. This was not just boys being boys. This was the beginning of his downfall, and Randy's crimes would escalate to numerous acts of disturbing sexual violence directed at women and girls. Number 2, Randy Woodfield was drafted by the Green Bay Packers in 1974. Almost played in the NFL. Maybe he would have, if he would have just literally kept his dick in his pants. Randy didn't survive cuts during training, but he was allowed to play for the farm team, had hopes of returning to the Packers, but then he was connected to 10 to 20 indecent exposure incidents in Wisconsin. No official statement was ever made, but it's believed he was cut from the team mainly because of these crimes. Number 3, there were 2 investigations that came together in this case. The first was the I5 investigation. Authorities were trying to identify a common suspect, a tall, dark-haired man who robbed restaurants and convenience stores along the highway. There were several cases where women were sexually assaulted, and in January of 1981, the I5 bandit / killer assaulted 2 young girls and shot 2 women who were cleaning an office building, killing one of them. The second investigation focused on Randy Woodfield directly. 3 women associated with him in some way were murdered, and he became a suspect, in these cases in early 1981. When Randy's house was searched in March of 1981, detectives found evidence linking him to the I5 cases. Number 4, Randy Woodfield may have killed somewhere in the neighborhood of 44 women and girls, raped another 60 plus. With how often he traveled and the intensity of his crime sprees, there are likely many, many cases that will never be officially solved. Number 5, new info, another potential victim. Randy may have begun killing a lot earlier than suspected. On October 12, 1974, a hunter found the skeletal remains of 2 women in a wooded area of Dole Valley, 14 miles northeast of Vancouver, Washington. 1974 was the year Randy was drafted by the Green Bay Packers when he was going to school, playing football near Vancouver in Portland State. Randy was arrested in August of 1972 in Vancouver for indecent exposure, arrested again for indecent exposure in the summer of 1973, in Portland. Was he already murdering women before he went to Wisconsin to play for the Packers? The first body was identified as 18-year-old Carol Valenzuela from Camas, Washington. Second body remained a Jane Doe for years. The police suspected the Jane Doe was 17-year-old Martha Morrison, who disappeared while on her way home to Eugene from Portland. We know he loved a 17-year-old. The Jane Doe was determined to be between 17 and 23 years old initially, around 5'2" to 5'5", with brown hair, which matched Martha's description. DNA will later confirm the Jane Doe is indeed Martha. Martha had run away from home before. She was in foster care, attended the Corvallis Farm School, might have run away from this facility before joining a Job Corps training program in Phoenix. While in Phoenix, she started to date somebody. Then they moved to Portland together. Martha and her boyfriend visited her mom in late August of 1974 before returning to Portland. The boyfriend reported that she left the apartment in September after an argument. Detectives believe Martha was then picked up by her killer while hitchhiking along I-5. The 2 main suspects in her murder, currently Ted Bundy and Randy Woodfield. Anyone who has information about what happened to Martha Morrison can call the Clark County Sheriff's Office Cold Case Unit right now, 360-397-2036, or email coldcase@clark.wa.gov.
Timesuck Top 5 Takeaways.
Serial flasher, rapist, killer Randy Woodfield has been sucked. Glad he and Cocky Steel are currently trapped in a steel cage. Thank you to the Bad Magic Productions team for all the help in making another episode of Timesuck. Thanks to Bad Magic Productions queen of Bad Magic, Lindsay Cummins, running operations around here. Thanks to Logan Keith recording this episode, designing merch. The new merch we got coming up here for badmagicproductions.com store. Thanks to Olivia Lee for the initial research today and bringing this dude to my attention. And thanks to the All Seen Eyes moderating the Cult of the Curious private Facebook page. The Mod Squad, making sure Discord keeps running smooth, and everyone over on the Timesuck subreddit and Bad Magic subreddit. And now let's head on over to this week's Time Sucker updates. Got a couple good ones about some previous subjects.
Updates? Get your Time Sucker updates.
I'm going to start off thanking numerous suckers for alerting us that Friday, May 31st, Bobby Willie, subject of Suck 237, the pig farmer killer, Canada's filthy Robert Picton, now has died from the injuries he suffered when he was attacked by another inmate, May 19th in prison. He had begun serving his life sentence in 2007. Actually, he became eligible to apply for partial parole this year. Good riddance, Bobby Willie! And also thanks to numerous suckers who let us know that Chad Daybell, one of the subjects of episode 378, Zombies, White Camps, and Murder, the story of Lori Vallow, was sentenced to death for the murder of his first wife and the murder of two of Lori's children on May 30th at the Ada County Courthouse in Boise, Idaho. Hail, Idaho! Fuck this fucking cult leader piece of shit. Turns out that he might not be an estate level 6 light worker after all like he's claimed. Dude is looking more like a level 6 demon zombie right now. He'll go through appeals for years and probably never see the electric chair, but he'll also never leave prison. Very glad that both he and Lori were dealt some justice. Lori already been sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole. Wonder how all their zombie demon lightworker talk is being received in prison. And now a quick Peaky fucking Blinders update from a British meat sack living in the Birmingham area. The Honorable Adam Duke writes in with a subject line of just simply Birmingham. Hey, just wanted to say how much I enjoyed your most recent podcast. Been listening for years, but as someone from nearby Coventry, this one really resonated. Your impressions of modern-day Birmingham are sadly fairly representative of much of the city. As you pointed out, though, there are some nice parts. The Jewelry Quarter still has beautiful Victorian pubs and restaurants. The city center has been modernized at a great cost. Grand Central Station is wonderful. And Small Heath adjacent, Digbooth is a hipster's paradise. You touched on sport, but I'd say the most interesting fact to an American audience is that the city's football club, Birmingham City, was recently purchased by a New York hedge fund alongside Tom Brady. Stadium is in Small Heath, just off the mentioned Coventry Road, founded in 1875 too. So it was around when all that was going on. That's cool. Lastly, there is a superb BBC reality documentary series from a few years back called Victorian Slum. Carl Chin, who was featured in that Peaky Blinders set, plays a prominent role in the proceedings. It's difficult to find, but still out there. Thanks again for all the content. Kind regards, Adam. Well, thank you, Adam, and thanks to YouTube for all the travel videos for essentially every town and city on Earth to allow us all to get a feel for a place without ever having set foot there. And good to know that Birmingham has its bright spots. I did watch several videos on Digbooth, and yeah, it looks like a stylish little neighborhood, all kinds of shit going on there at night. And now let's end on a stick story. A good old stick story. I have a feeling I'll be sharing some more next week. And actually, I forgot that I had my own stick story. I can't believe I forgot it when I was talking about how fun it would be to chase somebody with a stick. I was like, oh yeah, I did do that. I was like 12, maybe 12, 13. Yeah, maybe like 13. And this kid who lived next door to me, this fucking obnoxious kid, was playing on his trampoline. And we had these little, I don't know what kind of little saplings they were. These little like tiny, thin, like very elastic branches that would just kind of grow like tiny little trees. And you would just pull one of these like things off and it was like a whip. And if you had like some leaves towards the end, just if you got the right thickness, it would really actually leave a crack on somebody hard enough to draw welts. And his name was Paul, this kid. And he whipped me when I was waiting to go on the trampoline next. And he like whipped me in the back. And it kind of hurt, but not that bad. And instead of being sad about it, I was excited because now I felt like I had carte blanche to go find my own little stick, my little reed. Maybe that's what it's called, like a little reed, and just whip the shit out of him. And I did, and it was like the perfect situation. It was like exactly how I envisioned it. He didn't try to fight back, and he didn't run very fast, and he cried a lot. And he would yelp every time I fucking whipped him on his bare back, and little welts would form. And I just chased him around the yard like in a fucking cartoon, just fucking whipping him over and over. Ah! Ah! And he just would scream and just keep running. And I was laughing. And this is probably one of the greatest moments of my life. I can't believe I forgot about it. But anyway, we'll probably get more of these next week, but here's one now. Sore ass sucker Rory Fitzpatrick has a great stick story. Sent in with the subject line of, "You asked for stick beating stories," and Lindsay literally cry-laughed last night when she read this one to me. Listening to the end of the Peaky Blinders episode, you asked listeners to send in a good story about stick warfare. Well, I've got a great one for you. Back in 2004, it was my grandfather's 100th birthday party and a huge family reunion to celebrate. To be clear, my family is very old, traditional, and not fun in many ways. This was a 130-person party without a single drop of alcohol to be served, no smoking allowed, etc., etc., etc. So me being 22, I decided to sneak off and smoke some weed. I hid behind the small venue that we were using and lit up a little tiny joint. My grandfather, reminder, it's his 100th birthday, comes out looking for me, sees me standing there puffing on a joint, gets mad, and grabs a stick from the ground. I laugh and just kind of take off, kind of half running, thinking, whatever, he's 100 years old. I'll be fine. I turn around to see how long it took for Grandpa to give up, and there he is directly on my tail. He grabs me, rips me to the ground, proceeds to pull down my pants over my bare ass, and spank me with a stick he found laying on the ground. Reminder, it's his 100th goddamn birthday. Anyways, just thought I'd share that story, and if you could find in your heart to give a happy 40th, shout out to my darling Angie. I would love for her to hear it. Keep up all the good things you do. Whole family will always love your work. Praise Bojangles, hail Nimrod, and keep on sucking, sir. Rory. Holy shit, that's fantastic. There cannot be many people on earth who've experienced a stick whooping, bare-assed, no less, dished out by a centenarian, a fucking fast centenarian, and strong. It's fucking goddamn spider monkey. Sounds like you unintentionally gave him the best birthday present you really could have, right? A reminder that he still got it. And happy birthday, young darling Angie. I hope you and Rory have a lovely day. Fucking give each other some spankings, some fun ones. Thanks for that story, Rory. I look forward to sharing more next week.
Thanks, time suckers. I needed that.
We all did.
Thanks for listening to another Bad Magic Productions podcast. Scared to Death, Timesuck each week. Short Sucks and Nightmare Fuel on the Timesuck and Scared to Death podcast feeds some weeks. Please keep your dick or your lady ween in your pants in public. Actually, just keep your dick. If you have flash your lady ween, flash your puss if you want. Of course, you can flash your puss, but no dicks. And don't force anyone else to suck it. You just keep on sucking yourself.
Bad Magic Productions.
Hello, it's Cocky Steel again. I just want to address how I sound a lot like another Suckverse puppet Woody. Here's why. Dan only has one puppet voice. However, if you really listen, you can tell the difference. Woody sounds like this. Dan makes no attempt to keep his mouth from moving. But I sound like this. You know, Cocky. Can you tell the difference? Also, if you're a woman and older than 17, come visit me in prison. I'm lonely. And the only women who have seen my bald, handsome, throbbing face in years are the guards, and they're old and not kind. And they never suck on me, like ever. So swing myself. Cocky wants to take a good hard look at you and maybe see a nice wet kiss.